I don't see Juan.
I'm here.
Let's see. Oh, okay. Got it.
Okay, we want to mute again, right? During the meeting until we want to say something? Right? Can you guys hear me?
I hear you, Joey.
Thank you, Juan.
I think we do want to mute till everybody's.
Right? Okay.
I just can't see everybody. I see Brent, I see Joy, and I see John Crabtree.
I know, and I don't see everybody either. For some reason, it won't let me see everybody. I don't know what's going on.
It's a public meeting.
Go down to the bottom of your boxes and hover over that last picture, and you'll have a
Okay.
little arrow.
There.
Yeah. Okay.
There it goes.
There
Been
we
there
go.
before, Brent, have you?
Yeah, a few times. More in the last week than before in my life.
I'll bet.
Thank you.
Good evening, Brent.
Good evening.
Okay, I'm gonna mute myself till I
Jacob?
How's it going?
Okay, Mr. Fulmer, where is he?
Just a reminder to everyone, we are live.
If the public will bear with us for just a couple of minutes and we get the other board members in, we'll get started. This is pretty new to most of us and we're working out the bugs, so bear with us. And we're missing Dr. Vasquez. All right, I'll go ahead and open the meeting and get the formalities out of the way. This meeting is being webcast live recorded. The recording or webcast may capture images and sounds of those attending the meeting. Ms. Gamoyan, if you will lead us in a pledge of allegiance, we can all stand and face our favorite flag.
ready, salute. I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That was excellent. Vasquez is now with us. We're missing only Bill. All right, I'll go ahead and report the actions that we're taking this evening in closed session. On a motion by Mr. Fulmer, a second by Mr. Guerrero, the board voted unanimously to appoint Alma Navarro to the position of area administrator. So all board members were yay. Alma Navarro has been employed with Visalia Unified School District for 19 years. For the last 5 years, she has served as principal of Elbow Creek Elementary School. In addition to her current assignment, Ms. Navarro has also served as an elementary school assistant principal, teacher, and English language development coach. Ms. Navarro earned a Master's of Arts degree in Education, Reading, Language Arts, as well as a Behavior of Arts degree in Liberal Studies from California State University, Fresno. She also holds a multiple subject teaching credential, administrative services credential, and a bilingual cross-cultural language and academic authorization. Please congratulate Mrs. Alma Navarro on her appointment to the new position. Moving on to Mark Thompson, on a first by Ms. Gamoyan, a second by Mr. Foster. The board voted also unanimously in favor of appointing Mark Thompson, who is currently employed with the City Elementary School District as a middle school principal in Tulare. During his employment as with Tulare City Elementary School District. Mr. Thomas held the following positions: Vice Principal, Administrative Intern, Head Teacher, Director, and was a co-leader in the district administrative training program. In addition to Tulare City Elementary School District, Mr. Thompson was also employed with both Salem Keizer School District and Pixley Unified School District. Mr. Thompson earned a Master's of Arts degree in Education with an emphasis in administration from Chapman University and a Bachelor of Arts degree in Liberal Studies with a concentration in psychology from Fresno Pacific University. He also holds a multi-subject teaching credential and administrative service credential. Congratulations to Mr. Thompson. Also, the board, on a first by Ms. Dr. Vasquez, a second by Mr. Fulmer, to appoint, the board voted unanimously to appoint Roberto Vaca to the position of area administrator. Roberto Vaca has been employed as a high school principal with Cutler Rossi Joint Unified School District. Prior to this, he worked for both the Tulare Joint Union High School District and Sanger Unified School District, where he served as an assistant principal of counseling and a guidance and a learning specialist. Mr. Vaca earned a Master's of Arts degree in Educational Research and Administration, as well as a Bachelor of Arts degree in Psychology from the California State University, Fresno. He also holds an Administrative Service credential and a Pupil Personnel Service credential. Congratulations to Mr. Vaca. Also, on a motion by Ms. Gamoyan, a second by Mrs. Naylor, the board voted again unanimously to appoint Andy DeMayo to the position of Administrator of Human Resources Development. Andy DeMayo is currently employed as a management analysis with Kern County Superintendent of Schools. Prior to this, he was employed by Visalia Unified School District for 23 years. During his employment with VUSD, Mr. DeMayo served as a middle school principal, elementary school principal, teacher on special assignment, and as a teacher. Mr. DeMayo earned a Master's of Arts degree in Educational Leadership and Supervision, as well as a Bachelor of Arts degree in Liberal Studies from California State University, Fresno. He also holds a multi-subject teaching credential and administrative service credential. Again, congratulations to Mr. DeMayo. All right. We have some revisions at the on the packet this evening. Enclosure number 5, number 6, number 17, 18, and 25. This is the time for general public comment. General public comment on any school-related topic may be heard at this time. Comments will be heard through our telephone call-in system. The call-in number is 559-931-855. That's 559-931-8500. 931-8500. Did I get that right? We will take calls in the order they are received. The board asks that any public comment on an item listed on tonight's agenda be addressed at the time this item comes up for discussion by the board. Pursuant to board policy, the board may limit individual comments to no more than 3 minutes and individual topics to 20 minutes. Please begin your comments by stating your first and last name. Do we have any public comment? I am assuming Mr. Boone is taking this lead. We'll wait for just a few minutes to see if we get any calls.
And go.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jennifer Espinosa, Safe Tech at Crestwood Elementary School. And I'm concerned about the proposed elimination and reduction of classified positions, specifically the positions that are impacting our students and parent relationships. For example, we know the district has come under
We need to
fire.
screen these calls.
Excuse me, Ms. Espinoza. That item is on the agenda for later. You should call back when that item comes up.
Any other calls? Yes. All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Does anyone want to pull any items? Do I have a motion?
No. Yeah, I'd like to pull item numbers 7 and 11.
Any others? Do I have a motion for the remainder?
I moved.
Motion for
I have
the,
a first by Mrs. Naylor, a second by Mr. Guerrero. All in favor? It's unanimous, including the student rep. Okay, moving on. Mrs. Naylor, number 7.
Yeah, my concern, contract, it's for consultant for motivational presentation to students for the remainder of the year. But I just want to make sure, I could not see if there's any clause that says if we don't, resume school, are we still liable for the $12,000? Are they going to cancel this? Someone can let me know that for sure before voting on it.
Dee Dee?
Thank you for the question, Mrs. Naylor. We would not pay unless the services were rendered.
Okay, so there's a contract that says that we're not going to be locked in, and that's the same thing with enclosure number 11, my concern.
Speaking to enclosure number 11, this is not a formal contract. This is just a reservation form, but we've already been notified and double checked that we would not have to pay anything should we not go through with commencement ceremonies.
Okay, then,
Would you like to make a motion on those two?
yes.
I have a motion by Mrs. Naylor on 7 and 11. Do I have a second?
second,
I have a second by Mr. Guerrero. All in favor? It's unanimous.
Thank you.
All right, resolution, Public Schools Month, April 2020, enclosure number 14, Mr. Guerrero.
whereas public schools and sponsored and promoted by the Free and Accepted Masons of California since 1920, and whereas with community support throughout California, public schools can bring a variety of education opportunities into the classrooms to benefit. Also, once again, to affirm the success of California public schools, and whereas the Public Schools Month affords an excellent opportunity to students, parents, teachers, classified staff, administrators, school volunteers, and school board members, therefore be resolved that the Board of Education of the Visalia Unified School District does declare the month of April to be Public Schools Month and does acknowledge the role of the public education in developing students educationally and socially.
So moved?
I have a motion, was that by Mrs. Naylor?
Yes.
Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Gamoyen, all in favor? It's unanimous. Resolution, California Adult Education Week, April 13th through the 17th, 2020.
Whereas from April 13th through April 17th, 2020, the state of California will observe Adult Education Week, acknowledging adult schools for serving the changing economic and cultural needs of vigorous, expanding, and community instruction to those in our community who need English as a second language and citizenship courses. And whereas adult schools is a primary adult literacy and whereas Visalia School studies in their own time and pace, and whereas Visalia Adult School provides programs especially designed for our older adult and disabled population, and whereas Visalia Adult School provides career and technical training for adults seeking career changes or enhancement of individuals in diverse population. Now, therefore, the Visalia Unified School District hereby proclaims April 13th through the 17th, 2020 as Adult Education Week and salutes the administration, teachers, and students of the Visalia Adult School and honors their efforts.
So moved.
I have a motion by Ms. Gamoyen, second by Dr. Vasquez. All in favor? It's unanimous. Resolution, School Library Media Month, April 2020, enclosure number 16, Mr. Guerrero.
Whereas the library media program is to ensure the students and staff are effective users of ideas and information, and whereas the library media specialist's role is to provide the leadership and expertise necessary to ensure that the library media program is an integral part of the instructional program of the schools, and whereas the Board of Education has entrusted the library media specialist in each school to teach the skills of locating and using information to traditional resources and new technologies, to provide literature appreciation activities, and to guide and encourage content and recreational reading to every student. And whereas lifelong learning begins and is systematically developed through the library media curriculum of the elementary and secondary schools, and whereas the library media program contributes to the individual growth and development of all students while fostering both excellence and equity in education, and whereas the library media specialists of Visalia Unified School District have dedicated themselves to work for quality library media programs for all students, now therefore be resolved that the Board of Education of Visalia Unified School District Schools does hereby recognize April 2020 as a School Library Media Month and calls upon school administrators, teachers, and students to recognize and support this action and to participate throughout the month of April in the celebration of school library.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Naylor, a second by Mr. Foster. All in favor? Is that a yes? Okay, it's unanimous.
Mr. Crabtree, or President Crabtree, enclosure 15, I did not make the first motion. It was Mrs. Naylor.
Okay,
Well,
so who made the second then?
whoever made the second, you got right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Hopefully Delia got that.
I don't know. Yeah, I hope.
It's okay.
Did she get that, Dr. Radeland?
I was the second on that. This is Dr. Vasquez.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that was Mrs. Naylor and Dr. Vasquez. Okay, then if we're square and Mrs. Smart is happy, I'm happy, then we'll move on.
I'm happy.
Was our comment? It's hard to keep up with these stuttering screens.
Sorry,
Visalia Unified
President
School
Crabtree, this is
District.
Delia Smart, and I'm happy.
Matriculation to College of the Sequoias, enclosure number 17, Superintendent of COS, Brent Calvin. Your mic's off, Brett.
Thank you, President Crabtree and board members for carving out a little bit of time for me. If I can figure out how to get this presentation up, I'll walk you through it. Can you all see?
All right, nice job.
Okay, good.
Nice.
So this presentation is organized as normal. I'll have several pages regarding an update on College of the Sequoias here on campus, and then we'll switch gears about halfway through, and I'll give you an update on how your students are doing here at the College of the Sequoias. Let's see if I can. But first, a couple of introductions. Our board members. In fact, two of these board members, including Mr. Raymond Macareno, are joining us on the live stream. Welcome to Raymond.
Excuse me, Mr. Calvin.
Sure.
Can you change the display mode to duplicate, please?
Sure. Duplicate slideshow, is that right, Chuck?
Yes, please.
Is that better?
Perfect, thanks.
And then in addition to Raymond, I'd like to welcome Mr. Greg Sherman. I believe he had planned on joining us tonight as well. I've got a fantastic board, very supportive, including joining me on my road circuit to board presentations like this. So welcome to Ray and Greg. Student enrollment continues to climb at the College of the Sequoias. Let's see here. Over the last 5 years, we are up 16%. Even in 2019, you see it appears we took a little dip, but in actuality, we continue to grow. There was just some financial reasons for pulling some of our FTES back into 2018, which the state allowed colleges to do. But otherwise, we've been on a steady climb for at least the last 5 years, and probably more like 8. The number of high school students either participating in dual enrollment or concurrent enrollment has continued to climb as well. We are up by 139% over 5 years. Our number of awards have really skyrocketed in the last couple, particularly. You can see how the total number, how the number of degrees and the number of certificates have grown in the last few years. 87% overall, that's a 60% increase in degrees and 136% increase in certificates for our career and technical education fields. The number of our transfer prepared students continues to grow as well, up 28% in those 5 years. These are 18-19 numbers, and that was 1,532. And our guess is our 19-20 numbers will continue to grow as well. For the sake of comparison, you can see that the number of CSU transfers that we send is the third most in the Valley, behind Fresno City College and Bakersfield College, both much larger institutions than our own. This last year, for the 18-19 year, we had 545 choose the CSU route, compared with some of our other Valley colleges there. And that's about average for us. Over the last 10 years, we've transferred nearly 5,000 students to CSUs, with another 500 to 700 to UCs. But none of that would matter if it only applied to a certain population of our students, and that's not the case at the College of the Sequoias. Every year, we look at the demographics of our successful completers, and we compare that with the demographics of our overall student population. And you can see that the two mirror each other almost exactly. So for the 18-19 year, our largest population was our Hispanic student population. They made up 2/3 of our fall 2018 enrollment. They made up 2/3 of our overall award recipients, 64% of our degree recipients, and 68% of our certificate recipients. For our white student population, they made up 21% of our overall enrollment, 23% of our total awards, 24% of our degree recipients, and 21% of our certificate recipients. So there's still a little bit of work left to do in this area. but it's definitely a focus of ours and something that we keep very close tabs on. Our student success program identifies and works with all of our disproportionately impacted groups. And we've got as many as 15 or 20 active strategies at any one time, trying to pull our disproportionately impacted groups up to their other colleagues. I've included a couple of highlights from last year. We had a total of 1,744 degrees and 1,427 certificates, and we had 625 graduates at our ceremony, which may not seem like a lot for some of our larger high schools, but for us, having 625 graduates participate in the ceremony is a big deal. We had, I think, 7,500 or 8,000 people in your Mineral King Bowl, and it was quite a fun evening. 380 of those graduates were what we term honor students, graduating with at least a 3.5 GPA or above. This particular shot is our President Scholars from last year. That's a great program that we have a lot of fun with. We take this group on field trips to UC and CSU campuses. We meet twice a month on Fridays for lunch, and we bring in guest speakers. It really has been fun to get to know these students, several of which come from Visalia Unified Schools. We also graduated 125 peace officers last year, many of which received their badges and on that evening and went to work the next day. We had 30 firefighters graduate from our academy last spring. Again, most of those were hired on the spot. I don't have to tell you that all 80 registered nurses were hired within a week of passing their boards last spring. And our 28 physical therapy assistants not only graduated, passed their state test, and were hired, many of them received signing bonuses to do so. That's how hot the demand is for those services right now. The last thing I'd like to discuss before we get into Visalia Unified student-specific data is our efforts with AB 705. Remember, I talked to you about this last spring. That is the law that requires us to do away with placement exams for English and math and use their high school experience, their GPA, as well as their experience in English or math classes as the determining factor for placing them in our English or math classes. And virtually 99% of all incoming freshmen placed either into transfer level English or transfer level math or both. And we'll see some data a little bit later that supports that. So I wanted to show you this year, just this first fall, we tried this out. I wanted to show you how this changed. Our enrollment in English 1 shot up by 63%. So that tells you that an extra 1,328 first-time freshmen were in English 1 than the year before. That translated into an additional 777 students passing English 1 in their very first semester. Now that's huge because, well, we want to continue to work on their success rates. Data had showed us that these 1,328 students in the past would have started at least one level below transfer level English 1, and many times 2 levels below transfer level English. So what that means is if 60% of our students were passing that 2 levels below English 1 class, and then 60% were passing the 1 level below English 1, and then 60% were passing the actual English 1, you take 60% times 60% times 60%, that ends up being 21.6% of the original total, of the original 1,328. So you can see that we were able to pass 55% of that group by just putting them into the class and supporting them along the way. instead of making them take 3 separate classes over a period of 2 to 3 years. That's kind of the beauty of AB 705. Is it perfect? No, but does it get a lot more students through the pipeline successful in transfer level English and math? Yes. This slide essentially shows that there wasn't a huge dip in course success rate for English 1, despite the fact that we brought in an extra 63% of students that ordinarily wouldn't have gone directly into English 1. You can certainly read this on your own time. It's just more kind of analysis. On to math. Transfer level math isn't quite as easy as, or as easy to explain as transfer level English, because we do have several different courses that are transfer level math. Math 10 for teachers, Math 21 for the general population, that's more statistics. And then Math 35 is for STEM majors. At any rate, the number of students taking transfer level math jumped up by 162%. That's 1,453 students for us. And we had an increase of students passing transfer level math of 100%. We increased by 643 students. Again, you see here that we've got some work to do with the course success rate. We dipped from 72% in the fall of 2018 to 55%. Again, that same logic I talked about earlier still prevails, because if a student is stuck a couple levels below transfer level math, and you start doing the math for that student to get through 2 levels below, 1 level below, and then transfer level, it's going to be substantially lower than 55%. But again, we still have work to do with AB 705. Again, more analysis for you to read at your leisure. So on to bigger and better things, and that is our combined data for Visalia Unified School District. As always, I have kept the data aggregated, and Dr. Ravelin will be getting another report with all of the various high schools, the 4 high schools disaggregated, and she can share that at another day and time. So you see this first slide just shows the enrollment trend for the 5th year in a row. The number of students transferring to or enrolling at College of the Sequoias upon graduation has jumped up. We had 3,472 students enrolled for the fall of 2019. That included 855 first-time students, almost 1,900 continuing students, 304 returning students. Those are students that had been enrolled at the college at one time or another, took a hiatus and are now coming back, and then 77 first-time transfer students, and 348 K through 12 students. Those are students either enrolled in dual enrollment class or concurrently enrolled while attending high school. This next slide demonstrates, or the top of the next slide demonstrates, how many first-time continuing students are enrolled full-time. We like to show this because we feel like the key to success a lot of times rests in a student's ability to attend full-time as opposed to trying to attend part-time and work and so forth. So 79% of first-time students from Visalia Unified attended on a first-time basis for the fall of 2019, as opposed to 43% of continuing and returning students. At the bottom of this page, it gives you a good idea about what your students are majoring in once they get here. Registered nursing is always a popular major, as is psychology and business administration. This next slide is I need to give you the context, and we've already gone over AB 705. And you see for the 4 fall terms previous to 2019, those numbers are quite low because those students were taking placement exams and not nearly as many students were placing into English 1 or one of the transfer level math classes. And that changed this past fall with the advent of AB 705. And so the 86% shows that of the first-time students, of all first-time students, 86% of them took English, and they were enrolled in English 1. No longer do we have the level below or the 2 levels below. So what this indicates to us is there were 14% of our first-time students from Visalia Unified that just did not take an English class. And then down below, 59% of first-time students from Visalia Unified took a math class and were enrolled in a transfer level math class. So 41% of first-time students from Visalia Unified chose not to take math in their very first semester. This next slide is all about course success. You see that the numbers have held pretty steady. 76% for fall of 2008 was a high point, 75% for fall of 2019. That's all students from Visalia Unified in all classes. Then we have it broken down by gender. Those darn females always end up edging us out. 76% success rate for females, 73% for males. And then the unknown genders did a little bit better than both of them. And then down below, ethnicity, 76% for multi-ethnicity, 73% for our Hispanic population, 79% for our white population, and a combined 79% for all others. And again, you can kind of do some of your own comparisons over time, but in general, we see some very successful trends there. The next slide is all about number of graduates and the award types. You see under, for fiscal year 2019, that's the 18-19 year, we had 628 graduates or degrees, and then we had a total of 889 awards. So that award number would include at least 628 degrees, and frankly, there are students that earn multiple degrees, not a lot, but they have some. And then we have also the certificate awards is also factored into that 889 awards. So there may be some duplicate students earning those 889. You can see in the middle grouping there, the award types, undergrads and awards, what they consisted of primarily, a lot of AA degrees as well as AA degrees for transfer. Those ADTs that you've heard us talk about before are the degrees that we've negotiated as a system with the CSU system that guarantees your students placement into a CSU as long as they complete the 60 units within that ADT with at least a minimum threshold for GPA. The only frustrating part that we've had over the last couple of years is because the CSUs are almost all impacted, they keep moving the goalposts with respect to GPA. The ADT themselves stay the same, but they start moving the GPA up and up. It started at 2.5 and it's gone to 2.7, and I think it's probably on the move again. So we tell all of our students, if you're planning on transferring to a CSU on an ADT, shoot for at least a 3.0. And then down at the bottom of the page, we have our top 10 awards for Visalia Unified for the 18-19 year. And the child development degree continues to be popular, psychology, business administration, and looks like we had 11 registered nurses as well. So that concludes my slides. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. I'll leave my PowerPoint up in case anyone wants me to backtrack and find a slide that you had a question about.
We'll ask for public comment if people want to call in. While we're waiting, I'll ask board members if they have any comments. No comments?
Yeah.
Ms. Vasquez?
Yes, thank you, President Calvin. The last page of statistics that you showed us, that's all students, regardless if they're high school graduates or they're in dual immersion. Is that correct?
Correct. So if we had a dual enrolled senior that earned a degree, or for that matter, a certificate, they would show up in this data. We don't have a lot of that for any district, not just Visalia Unified, but yes, it would show up in this data set.
And do you have any records, or do you keep track? I know that we have at Mount Whitney our own medical assistant kind of program. Is that two separate things, or do they generally go from, say, that medical assistant program to your nurses, a registered nurse program? Do we have any statistics that show, or is there any correlation at all?
Dr. Vasquez, we may have, and I'm just not aware enough. I can certainly talk to our Dean of Allied Health and see if we have some correlation. I know they keep a lot of information like that, and I can kind of on the side, I can see if I can find some information for you on that. But those programs obviously are set up for that purpose. We encourage dual enrollment and concurrent enrollment, to give students the encouragement that they can do well in college, allow them to get their feet wet, and then hopefully get involved in a program they really like, which is a nice segue or a nice on-ramp into a program like nursing. And I would say that the medical terminology program, or at least set of classes, is not only helpful for nursing, but all of our allied health programs, physical therapy, pharmacy, and so forth. So great question. I can try to find out on the side, but I'm just not aware of any kind of crosswalk data that we have on that.
Thank you.
Mrs. Naylor, did you have a comment?
I just want to thank you for working, so closely with us, but you're doing a great job. These numbers look amazing. So thank you, and for your staff for supporting students and giving them the goals and the education they need to be successful. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Other board member
Naylor.
comments?
Thank you for that comment, Mrs. Naylor. We are privileged to work with many wonderful K through 12 districts, and Visalia Unified is no exception. Very well run, with wonderful people to work with, and we just really value and cherish our partnership with the district.
Thank you.
Mr. Guerrero?
Yeah,
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that you're going to provide statistics on each high school that the data on those two and how well they've done at COS. How soon will that be? Were you guys able to hear me?
No.
You're kind of cutting out, Board Member Guerrero. I think what you're asking is how soon we will have data available for your superintendent that disaggregates it by the 4 high schools. That information will be available tomorrow. I will be sending that to Dr. Radlin. So if that was your question, that's the plan. If that's not what your question was, you better ask it again.
Did that have you covered, Mr. Guerrero?
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Vasquez?
Yes, I'm sorry. I wanted to ask if you could go back a couple of slides. Actually, I don't know how far back it is if you don't want to do that. But my question is, you made comment about how they no longer, yeah, this is it. They know students no longer have to take those tests before they come in, and don't take those preliminary classes. And it seems to be working well. I know nobody really understood how well it would work when it started. It's been in place a couple of years now. This looks to me like it's working, that even students that may have been put in an elementary class before are now taking a class and are being supported and are being successful? Or is this just the placement numbers? Oh, where'd you go? You were right
Well,
where I
I'm going to
wanted.
show you. I'm going to show you. This is a better slide
Okay,
to look at, Dr. Vasquez. This is not just Visalia Unified students, and we've been planning for it for 2 years, but we've only done it for this past fall of 19, and then we did it again for here spring of 2020. So again, you see the number of our students that enrolled in transfer level math. In fact, I can go back 2 slides further. Excuse me. For transfer level English, we enrolled an additional 63% in that transfer level English class. That 1,328 students you see there, those are first-time students that would not have been placed into English 1 in years past.
yeah, but how many were able to complete the coursework?
Right
I
under,
mean, it's
right
great that
under
we
that,
got more people there, but,
exactly, right under that, you see 777.
okay, there you go.
That's the number that successfully completed. So we increased the number of successful completers by 55%. And this is where my example comes in. In years past, if that 1,328 students would have started 2 levels below English 1, and then they would have 60% would have passed and moved on to 1 level below. 60% of those would have passed and gone on to transfer level English, and 60% of those would have passed. So if you add up what that sequence would have been, 21.6% of the original 1,328 would have passed. And in this scenario, 777 out of 1,328 passed.
55%.
So about 59% of that 1,328 instead of 21.6%. So it's definitely been a great strategy for increasing, first of all, the number of students taking transfer level English and math, and thus passing. I'll caution us all, though, is that we still have work left to do with those success rates. And so none of us are going to rest on our laurels here. We're going to keep working hard on those success rates to get that number up even higher. But to answer your question, yes, so far AB 705 is doing what it set out to do. While there is a dip in success rates, more students are getting through the pipeline of English and math and allowed to kind of take the courses that historically those gatekeeper classes have kept them from being able to participate in.
And they're getting done faster, but I don't see anybody sitting on your laurels. I was able to visit your student success centers and just very impressed with the kind of support that you have for your students, allowing them to check out a computer if they need, having somebody watch them a little more closely, the kinds of stuff you have in place with Puente. You guys are doing a great job.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vasquez. I appreciate that. All those student success centers are part of our student success program. And we've had some wonderful leadership in that area, and they've done some remarkable things for all of our students, but in particular for our disproportionately impacted groups. And we're really, really excited about that program.
Yes, thank you.
Other board member comments? Do we have any public call-in?
No, there were not.
Mr. Calvin, that was a nice report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President Crabtree, and board members. Thank you for carving out the time and allowing me to present. I look forward to doing it face-to-face next spring.
All right, we will too. Enclosure number 18, Local Control Accountability Plan Update. Mr. Sullivan. Turn your mic on. The guy.
And can you see it?
Yes, sir.
And I change it to just like that, Chuck?
You got it.
Okay. Good evening, Board President. My name is Jim Sullivan, and I'm here to share with you our local control accountability plan update. I wanted to share with you first that we are currently, based on the governor's proposals, we'll have 48 million in our supplemental and concentration funds. And our federal funds, we received close to 12 million. Each of those funds we share them and ask our stakeholders, our bargaining units, DLAC and District Advisory Committee to provide input into the development of our LCAP. So all of those funds are currently written into our LCAP and how we spend those funds. In engagement in goal 1, in the board goal of goal 1 of engaging students in a challenging curriculum, this is what we currently provide. Kindergarten paraprofessionals, I'm not going to read all of them. Intervention teachers, we currently have 18 elementary intervention teachers. We provide class size reduction, some professional development, and for next year, we'll focus on math and language development. And goal 3, maintaining, caring, encouraging environment. We currently provide support with behavior intervention techs, school psychologists, our assistant principals who focus on behavior, English learners, homeless and foster youth, as well as we provide some professional development in the area of behavior. This chart, and you'll see these for each of our different, for middle school and high school. This is the ranking of if you look at the far right, that's the community ranking of where we had over 700 people provide feedback. The general session was a session where we asked principals to provide a staff, a classified and certificated staff to come in, and they ranked different activities. And then you can see the principals ranking as well. So based on their rankings and based on what we were looking at programmatically, you can see in red, those are the changes we're proposing in our library support, HEART, SAFE. Our SAFE positions are gonna look a little different. Teachers printing, and then our summer library programs. So the proposed changes are to not provide a supplemental funds for HEART at 7-8 at Ivanhoe and Willow Glen. Our STEM programs that are non-HEART sites, which are Hurley, Shannon Ranch, Oak Grove, and Denton. Eliminate the district printing. SciCon, we're going to cut down to 4 days. Our library book funds, currently what we do is we allocate about $500,000 every year for books. And then in addition to that, we've been providing additional funds as libraries have been remodeled or libraries are built, such as Sequoia or new schools. What we're proposing is that we're just going to allocate $500,000, and then our district librarian would use those funds to purchase books for the new schools, and then whatever's remaining is to provide support for the rest of the district. And then we're also looking at adding an additional, we currently have one on-campus intervention class. We're asking to provide another one. For goal 1 in middle schools, you can see we pretty much, we provide the same type of supports, except for we added after-school programs in the past for some of our sites, as well as the BITs, and you can see school psychologists as well. For maintaining, caring curriculum, or maintaining and caring, encouraging learning environment, we provide our BITs, the professional development, and we also provide an additional campus supervisor that works with for gang intervention. Based on the middle school's results, you can see that our after-school programs was ranked at the bottom pretty consistently. You can see class size that we're looking at, the behavior intervention techs we're looking at, and then the teacher printing as well. So our proposed changes are to eliminate after-school programs at La Jolla and Ridgeview. Those are the two that are provided because they do not receive the ACES grant. Summer school, again, is provided for middle school strictly by the after-school program. So we're asking to eliminate that. Currently, class sizes in middle school is actually lower than our elementary, so we're looking at readjusting those, looking at adding, ensuring that we have on-campus interventions at each of our middle schools, again, eliminating district printing, but then we're also going to put in counselors at each of our middle schools. These would be our credentialed counselors that would be able to work with students, not just on academics, but as well as emotional needs, social and emotional needs. For high schools, you can see we provide pretty much the same thing. In addition, though, we provide funds for AP testing. Each of our high school students is guaranteed that we will pay for one AP test. In addition to that, we provide additional support for the CT and Linked Learning Academies. We also provide, and it's not on here, is additional counselors, which we do, and also an additional assistant principal at the high schools. For the goal 3, again, it's the BITs, the additional principal, additional campus supervisor, as well as some drug counseling. We're looking at, here's the rankings of the high schools, of the activities that were in the high school area. And you can see that we looked at BITs were significant, or we're looking at restructuring their work, looking at our library support again, funds for Linked Learning Academy, and I'll explain that in just a moment, as well as additional prep periods where that is a negotiable item, so we're not going to discuss that one. We are going to discuss, though, district printing again, the BITs. The principals are looking at how to provide that support in a different way versus having the BITs on campus. The Linked Learning funds, many of you know that our current Linked Learning Academies qualify for CTE funds, so we will eliminate the additional funds we provide through our LCAP funds and just keep it for the academies that do not qualify for the grants from the CTE, from like Perkins, as well as the other grants they have. Goal 2, this is a district-wide support. That's our SAFEs, our social workers, and our parent universities. What we're proposing is remember, I shared this with you at our last board meeting. This is our current model where high school doesn't have any support. Middle school has a social worker, elementaries have SAFEs, and Ed Options has social worker or SAFEs, it depends. We're looking at providing feeders. A high school feeder group would have 2 social workers, a SWAT, which is our student welfare and attendance technician, as well as 2 district liaisons. These people would become a very strong team. They would help support the families from high school down to elementary school. We're looking at creating them so that they would meet weekly or month or bi-weekly to discuss families and how to best support families. Also for Parent University, it kind of helps us where we would then be able to train our district liaisons in focusing, like a group would be on special education, so they could work and become help parents become more engaged in their child's education, and helping them understand the special education laws, what's expected from them and what's expected from us, as well as our English learners. We'd also then help them have a better understanding of how they could support their families and parents, and how to support their kids with behavior, as well as provide additional community-wide events. We'd also be able to then provide, these district liaisons would be very skilled in presentations. So our PK and our school smarts would look a lot stronger and a lot differently. So that's part of the plan with our district liaisons. For recruitment and hire, I'm just kind of reviewing this with you, as we provide teacher support department and recruitment funds. We're reducing our recruitment funds a little bit. Dee Dee has been working on that already, and so we're eliminating some of those funds. Other district support, we currently fund all of our accountability department, which is my department, the curriculum department, all of the social and emotional wellness department is all funded through our LCAP, as well as we provide additional certificated nurses, and we provide support for BITs and social workers at Sequoia and Creekside. Our proposed changes there is we're going to reduce the discretionary funds for each of our departments. significantly. And that's our proposed changes that we would like you to consider as we start looking at our LCAP. You know, in the next month, I need to share with you the exact activities we'll be providing.
Okay, we'll ask for public comment again. And while we're waiting for that call in, is there any board comments? Ms. Gamoyan. Turn your mic on. Not yet.
Can you read my lips? Okay, so social emotional got a huge grant, so we should be giving them less money out of our LCAP?
So currently we have not planned on doing that, but that's something we need to think about, yes.
I think we do need to think about that. I'd like
Any other board member comments? Mrs. Dr. Vasquez.
Yeah, we do have a comment from the public that was put on the chat. They're asking, are we hiring more SWATs and district liaisons?
We currently have no district liaisons, so all of those will be new positions. We will be hiring, I think the proposal is in addition to that, there's also a homeless and foster youth liaison. There'll be 6 SWATs and currently there are 5.
I'm sorry, I didn't get to finish. Thank you. I'm just real concerned. I know that with the LCAP funds, we have over each year been able to increase the number of social workers, some BITs, and I know that we're switching things up with the new model. So I just really want to make sure. It scares me when I see things in such a structured way to show like equality when really all campuses are not equal, and
no,
the
and I think
need
that's
is definitely different in some of the campuses.
And Dr. Vasquez, that's why we want to go to this model, because you're right, all campuses aren't equal and currently they're staffed for equal. Whereas with this model, we're going to focus on families in need. If you look at let's go back to the structure a little bit. There's 2 social workers, a SWAT, and 2 liaisons per feeder. So some schools in those feeders require more services than others. So therefore, we'll be able to disperse the services based on need, not just because you have a safe at one school or a social worker at a middle school and no support at the high school, or an elementary may need a social worker and currently they do not have access to one.
Well, I know you guys have all worked really hard at this whole restructuring, and we have a lot of new people on board and a lot of new people in new positions. So I'm hoping what's being put in place there is that we are, I don't want to say make sure people are doing their jobs, but I think before what we understand is that when campuses got a personnel, that person was being used as the campus decided, as opposed to exactly what they were in there for. And I think I'm really hoping that we have safeguards in the system now that our social workers, our interns, our social emotional people are really going to be used in that capacity where the need is. And that there's a system in place to assure that, along with your new model of service. But I do appreciate that in the last year or so, every time staff comes to us and explains a new system, that they've had voices from all the different levels of system, and we've had teams in place from staff, from principals, and I really appreciate that. And I'm really hoping that these models really work well and that are streamlined and that really have those checks and balances, so that we are making sure that people are doing their job, the one that they're paid for, the one that there's need for. And I'm really pleased to get a clearer understanding of that we're going to go where the need is, and that we're going to be more needs-based than just, feeder school based, which is what you're showing me on the service. But what you're telling me is different. So I appreciate that. And I hope that we really do get a chance to really put the resources where our highest needs are. I appreciate all your guys' work. Thank you.
Mrs. Naylor?
Yeah, I just wanted to also kind of going back to that social emotional grant that we, if Jim, you could look into that and make sure that we're utilizing that grant and not spending LCAP money where we could be spending grant money. So if you
Okay.
could look at that and get back to us on it. Thank you.
Sure, I will.
Mr. Guerrero?
Yeah. I'm getting back to the proposed changes for Hart and Ivanhoe, and then also the after-school programs at Ridgeview. And I'm asking these questions because the sites that are being affected are number one, Goshen, and number two, Ivanhoe. And I specifically that those free and reduced lunch have a high number of English learners, high levels of poverty. And LCAP's intent is to, you're looking at concentration grants, you're looking at grants that are really supposed to be directed at our student population, families that are in not very good socioeconomic situations. And with that in mind, I'd really like a list of all the other schools that receive these LCAP funds for after school programs. And I want to take a look at that list because it just seems to me that that we need to, if we're going to make cuts, I want to see the whole list. So I want to know exactly what's being spent correctly. We just went through a WAS accreditation meeting at Mount Whitney High School, and there were concerns that were brought up there in terms of how LCAP was being used. And if we're really using it as intended to serve the population in need. And so, I just have a question where the funds are actually being used. I want to know which schools receive these funds, all the schools, at what level, and how well they're performing. And that's my question right now.
Dr. Vasquez, or I'm sorry, Dr. Ravelin?
We can send you that list out this week, so we can get that to you. Jim, I think you wanted to clarify.
Yeah, there will not be any after-school funds. We won't be providing any after-school programs with our LCAP or supplemental concentration funds.
Well, that would be your opinion, Jim, and I respect that. What I'm really saying is this: is that we need to put monies where we have high level of high poverty, homeless, or bad socioeconomic situations. And I think we need to have a good discussion on that. I mean, I'm going to get back to that situation at Mount Whitney. We're talking, when we went over there, Mount Whitney is serving the Washington Elementary School District, it's serving the Lincoln Oval area, and it's serving the LCAP. You have other schools, you have other areas in our community, such as Ivanhoe and Goshen, and I don't want to see those programs lose their funding. And you may have that opinion that nobody's going to get these funds. Okay, fine. So let's talk about this a little bit more. We're going to go through some reductions, budget reductions, and okay, I understand that it's needed. We're going to do that. And if it happens, it happens. But as soon as we can bring some of those programs back to these areas that are in economic distress or not a well-to-do area, then we need to do that, because that is really the intent of LCAP.
Ms. Gamoyan, turn on your mic. Turn on your mic.
Trying. Okay. Juan, it seems like the only after school program, because I think all the after school programs are funded, the only one is the 7th, 8th at Ivanhoe. I don't think Goshen will be affected. So the only one that will really be affected is the Ivanhoe one, although our Goshen kids do go to Ridgeview, so maybe we need to consider that one. But really, the after-school programs are not being affected. It's only the 7th and 8th grade, it seems like.
Okay, so we have two different afters. We have Hart, which will be at at the current elementary sites. So Hart at Ivanhoe will still exist for K6, because that's what their grant is for. If they have additional slots, they can put in 7th and 8th graders for Hart at Ivanhoe, as well as Willow Glen. As for Ridgeview and Ivanhoe and La Jolla, they currently do not receive the after-school program grant at all. So we have been funding those programs through our LCAP. If we look at the numbers who are going, if I remember right, the principal at Ridgeview was saying the numbers are very, very low. So that was taken into consideration, as well as what the public viewed as, you know, one of the, they were on the lower end of the recommendations. So
Any other board comments? Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. We'll move on to enclosure number 19, dual immersion update. Sarah Seymour.
Hold on, John. You asked for public comment and you asked for board comment before.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have a public comment?
You have at least 3 on the chat. I don't know if you have any on the phone, but people are making comments on the chat.
Well, the problem with the chat is the people are commenting on an item that's coming up on enclosure number 25.
Mr. Crabtree,
This one says about the model change. That's what we were talking about. It says, have school site admin been involved in this model change? That's the model change, what we're talking about now.
That's still the personnel issue, I would think. Is that not right, Dr. Evelyn?
Yeah, so right now we're just working on the plan and need some consensus on moving forward in the direction. We're not talking about particular positions that may be eliminated or others that we will be adding necessarily. We're just doing an overview, but also the directions on the board agenda are that if there's public comment, they're to call in, not use the chat. So we need to abide by our protocols so that everybody has equal opportunity.
Okay, but the question was, are these talking about these questions talking about the new model, or are they talking about personnel, which would be 25? I'm just stating that they're saying new model. And can we give them the phone number again if you're asking them for public comment? Is they're asking for the number?
Yes, we can do that. Let me look at the agenda. You got it? So the phone number again for the telephone call-in system is 559-931-8500. Again, that's 559-931-8500.
Thank you.
you do have a caller on the line at the moment.
Okay, go ahead. Can you send it through, Mr. Boone?
Begins.
Oh, hi, my name is Natalie Hodgin. I'm currently a 6th grade teacher.
I can't hear.
I wanted to call in regards to the changing SciCon to a 4-day week was on one of the LCAP proposals. And I just wanted to speak on behalf of keeping the 5-day SciCon week. I think it's such a unique opportunity for our students to get to go and experience this. And having been there as a 4-day week participant and as a 5-day week participant, it's really a whole lot of stuff that our kids are missing out on. And it's such a unique experience to have the whole district be able to say that our kids get to go through this amazing program. And cutting it down to 4 days, I think, would be such a huge disservice to the 6th graders in our district, especially those students who, this is their only chance to experience something like this. We're providing an experience that they might not have gotten otherwise, and so to cut it down and to change it so drastically, I think would be a huge loss for our district overall.
Thank you for your comments. Any other public comments? Any further board member comments? That being the case, we'll move on to enclosure number 19, dual immersion update. Sarah Seymour.
Mr. Crabtree, there is a comment from the last item.
Okay.
One moment. Can you please start again and give your name, please?
Sure. My name is Randy. I was calling to comment on the new model of service. And my comment was that, we talked a little bit about some of the schools that were going to be impacted, some of the students that were going to be impacted at the 2 elementary schools that have 7th and 8th graders. And I brought this to the board, I believe in the fall of last year, of 2019. And I want to raise it again. We've constructed a new middle school, and we still have students that are in 7th and 8th grade attending elementary schools. And here we are talking about a potential conflict in funding, potential conflict in services for these 7th and 8th grade students who are attending elementary schools. And what my concern is, and a question, well, a concern that I want to share with the board is that why are we continuing to have 7th and 8th graders attending elementary schools when they're really not being served well in that environment? I don't believe they're not getting the same sort of preparation for high school by attending school at an elementary school. They're not getting the same opportunities in terms of sports and extracurricular activities. They're not getting the same sort of instruction as to building the necessary skills to go into high school, to be moving from one class to the next, to having different teachers, and the structure that's required for their being able to attend at a high school and be successful at a high school level. So I just wanted to call that to the board's attention as we continue this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my understanding that the students that are attending the K-8 programs, it's a parent's choice because they feel it's a more nurturing environment because the student has been there all the years that they have. They know the teachers and they don't feel that the 7-8 model would really work for them, which is why I believe that we put this model together in the first place.
Mr. Crabtree? Can you hear me?
Who's talking?
Fulmer.
Oh, okay, go ahead, Bill.
I would just like to say that my own kids went through a K-8, and I'm a big fan of K-8s, and this is by choice. Kids aren't required to stay to go to K-8. They're allowed, if they request to go to junior high, they go to a junior high. And there are kids that I think are much better served in the less challenging environment of a K-8.
Yeah, I agree. Mr. Guerrero?
The other reason that we established the seventh and eighth grade classes at the elementary schools was because schools that were impacted the high enrollments at our middle schools. That's
Any other board member comments? Okay. Then now we will move on to enclosure number 19 if we have no more public calls. Okay, enclosure 19, Sarah Seymour, dual immersion update.
Good evening, Board President Crabtree, Dr. Raveline, and fellow board members. My name is Sarah Seymour, Director of Curriculum and Instruction for Visalia Unified, and tonight I will provide an update on the prospect of a two-way dual immersion program in Visalia Unified. I'm going to begin with a brief overview of what a two-way dual immersion program is, then update you on district committee work, our community survey, and then what we've learned from other districts, and end with some recommendations. As you will recall, earlier this year, I presented information on the Global California 2030 document that was put out by the California Department of Education. This document gives us guidance on how we can increase dramatically the number of high school seniors graduating with the seal of biliteracy. One of the pieces that's mentioned in the document is the proposal to have dual immersion programs to provide language opportunities for students in preschool through 12th grade. If you will recall, a two-way dual immersion program has a balanced number of English learners as well as English speakers. So in this case, we would have half of our students being English learners in Spanish language, and the other half would be native English speakers. Our instruction at the lower levels in the primary would be 90% in Spanish and 10% of the instruction in English, and it would move into 6th grade where it becomes more of a 50-50 split, with our ultimate goal of students becoming bilingual and biliterate. Some of the considerations that we discussed at that time were staffing, school sites that we would be interested in choosing, the community interest, curriculum and instruction, as well as various funding models. Over the last few months, I have met with a committee comprised of principals and teachers in Visalia Unified who have varying levels of experience with bilingual education programs as well as dual immersion programs. All are very much in favor of starting a dual immersion program here in Visalia Unified. They helped put together a community survey that has been posted on social media as well as our district webpage the last couple of months. And I'm going to share with you some of the highlights of the survey. If you're interested in seeing the full results, I can send those out to you this week. You'll notice at the very top that the grade levels represented by the respondents or parents in our community were over 50% were preschool and kindergarten students. This is important to note because as we start a program such as a dual immersion program, we would want to start with our youngest students, our preschoolers, our kindergartners, our first graders. So over half of the respondents were parents of students in that age bracket. The primary home language of over 85% of the respondents was English. This is not to say that there aren't multiple languages spoken in the home, but 85% of them were primarily English-speaking households. Then the last question that I highlighted tonight was, are you interested in your child participating in a program that would provide them the opportunity to read, write, speak, and listen in another language? And you will see that over 95% of those that responded said yes. I also had an open comment section where those that responded could type in any type of feedback or comments that they wanted. And I've highlighted a couple on the far left. And this is the type of comment that we received back. There were only a handful of comments that were people that weren't in favor of us starting this kind of program in Visalia Unified. As I went out and talked with districts who have dual immersion programs and actually visited one in Fresno Unified that's longstanding, there were some overarching themes that seemed to develop. One was the importance of having qualified staff. Not only important that these teachers know how to teach literacy in English, but also Spanish as well at very high levels because they're going to be teaching students to read and write in 2 languages. The other is the ongoing training of staff, including paraprofessionals, principals, as well as classroom teachers. The area that we learned the most about was resources. One resource that we hadn't thought about was the libraries that would need to be augmented, not only in the classroom, but the site level library to support the students in a bilingual education program. I met with a teacher librarian in Fresno Unified who shared with me her experience gathering materials in Spanish to support the library. It was very interesting to learn that our nonfiction texts in Spanish cost 2 to 3 times as much as those in English, as well as the difficulty finding fiction texts that are authentic in the Spanish language and not just merely translations from English text. And so those are areas that as I worked with other districts and spoke with them, that kept coming up, the difficulty in finding text. The other piece was the importance of having curriculum available to teachers in both English and Spanish. If you recall, most of the day in the primary grades will be spent teaching in Spanish, but they will have a portion of the day that's in English. And it's important that that time, which is a designated English language development time, is at high levels. The instruction provides access to academic text, academic vocabulary, and that it's important that they have the same curriculum as students that are in English-only classrooms in the district. And then the other was that all district documents for teachers be in both languages. So that would be pacing guides, question stems or prompts that we might put out for teachers that are generally just in English, that we provide those in Spanish as well. Some considerations for sites. As we look at sites, most of the districts we spoke to said that they really looked for sites where 30% of the school was already English learners, so that you weren't having to try to recruit English learners and English speakers to a school site. You already had a base of English learners there to draw from. And then the importance of building the buy-in for the entire staff, because all staff on the site need to support this program. There was also a document that was put out by the Center for Applied Linguistics called the Guiding Principles for Dual Language Education. Every district I spoke to talked about their year-long research, reading, and discussion at the district and site level of this document, and really the guiding document to help them in their decision-making and build a common understanding.
Is there any, if there's any public comment, please call in on the phone number that's been supplied.
The overwhelming response of our district committee as well as our community has been in favor of venturing into a dual immersion program here in Visalia Unified. I would like to recommend that the board supports our continued work in this area. However, I believe it's important that we are ready for launch, fully ready for launch of this kind of program. I do not believe that we are ready to launch in August 2020. I would recommend that we look at August 2021 as the launch of this type of program so that we could spend next year recruiting, hiring, training, finding the right location, and also spending time in this guiding principles for dual language education so that we can be prepared to make sure that our students are able to reach those goals of being biliterate and bilingual. Are there any questions?
Okay, while we're waiting for the public to use the phone number to call in, I will ask for board member comments. Do I have any?
Yes.
Can I go?
Mr. Fulmer?
Dr.
Everyone
Vasquez,
is-
go ahead. But I would like to speak.
Dr. Vasquez?
Thank you. One of the things that you have there, Mrs. Seymour, is having the whole campus on board. So you're proposing a whole nother year of preparation. Do you already have one campus, two campuses in mind? Are you looking at 3 or 4 of them? I mean, I know that we have to have people in place, and I know when we talked about this maybe 5 years ago, there was a big concern for not having enough staff. I think that has really switched up, especially knowing now that, COS has been training people that will have, the teachers. That's not the concern anymore. Cost is always a concern, but we're still going to have the same number of students and teachers in there. So I'm just wondering, are we looking at 2 sites, 3 sites? Even though I know you want a year of planning, can you give us a little insight on what the possibilities are from what you know so far?
We have discussed 2 sites, and I'm not as concerned about the recruiting of staff just because I think our HRD department does a fabulous job if they know ahead of time of really looking out for those teachers as they attend job fairs, and we have student teachers here in Visalia Unified. So that wouldn't be the concern, but the buy-in of the whole staff community, if we place it at an elementary site, making sure that all of the staff are on board and understand how, even though we have teachers teaching in Spanish and next door in English, we still would all be in the same PLC working together on common instructional practices with the ultimate goal of our students all becoming literate by the time they leave various grade levels.
Okay, so
So right now we're looking at 1 to 2 sites for a launch in 2020. Fresno Unified has had a dual immersion program for years, and we visited with their coordinator, and they have slowly rolled out over the years and added another this year. It's not something that as we speak to other districts, they feel like you should jump in with multiple sites at one time. We want to make sure we start and we start well.
Another thing that I don't, maybe I missed it in your presentation, but that's always just so glaring for me is that every single district that I've talked to talk about how when the students get to 5th and 6th grade from a dual immersion program, even though it is a long time to wait, that they're always at the top of the district, the top performers. Academically, they are so far ahead of the entire school district, and that's happened in 5 or 6 districts that I've talked to that have dual immersion programs. Has that been your experience as well?
Absolutely. Many of them talk about how in the primary grades, students may be behind some of their English only counterparts in English only classrooms because they are acquiring 2 languages. And usually by 3rd to 4th grade, you start to see that increase. And by 5th or 6th grade, many of them are the top performers in their district as on standardized testing.
Thank you.
Mr. Fulmer?
I've been doing really, I think, quite a bit of reading on the bilingual programs. And quite honestly, what I've read has been pretty iffy. I'm not at all sold that it's all this wonderful. And the other thing I would like to point out, which is just one of my hobby horses, but anyway, we used to have a good foreign language program in Visalia Unified. We had French, German, Spanish, and at one time Latin, and it was destroyed very quickly by one superintendent and one board. And I would really like to look back into reinstituting, other languages. The idea that the only language out there is Spanish is frankly offensive. Thank you.
Mr. Fulmer, there's a big difference between bilingual education and the dual immersion program that Mrs. Seymour is talking about. And the statistics for children learning at the 0 to 5 area is huge.
Yeah, well, no, I said it wrong. You're correct. I used the wrong term.
Any other board member comments? So I'm assuming we're sticking to just the Spanish language for dual immersion. We're not considering any other.
At this time, yes, that is what we are considering. In Fresno Unified, which has a long-standing history of dual immersion programs, they're starting to venture into other languages. And we talked about some of the difficulties with that. And so if we're going to start a program, I would suggest it be in a language that we have more access to materials as well as teachers at this time.
Mr. Guerrero?
Well, we've already had the experience of having a charter school come in and want to set up a program at one of our schools. And I think that we either do it ourselves or somebody's going to do it here for us. And Bill's absolutely correct. We had very good programs 20 plus years ago, and they were destroyed. And I'm very disappointed with that, but I think we need to proceed, and I'm in full support of this.
Thank you. Any other board member comments? Thank you, Mrs. Seymour. This was for information only.
I believe we have a couple of people online who would like to comment as well.
And Chuck, I've gotten a couple of flashes on this chat line that says that phone number is not working. So if we can give that number out one more time, and I will do that. The number is 559-931-8500. Okay, public comment?
Yes, Mr. Crabtree, the line is working. They just need to wait until you're asking for comment,
Okay.
and then we'll be picking up. But here you go. Okay, proceed talking in just a moment and announce your name first, please.
Okay, can
Mr. Gonzalez, are you there? Okay, go ahead and proceed talking in just a moment. Begin with your name.
Hello, good evening. My name is Raul Gonzalez. And I was the one that was saying I couldn't get through. I got through. I wanted to make the comment about Prop 58, which was passed overwhelmingly by the voters of California, which required us to do some type of language development. And full immersion was one of the options. My first question is, where are we on that? Secondly, to respond to Mr. Fulmer's comment about language and what it gives us in terms of our instruction, we find, and a lot of people can verify this, that our students that are dual language learners, that are language, the ones that are acquiring that language, a second language, are the ones that are outperforming our monolingual students in every area. So I think it's a really good investment to do that. I used to be part of that bilingual program 10, 15 years ago, however long it's been. And I can tell you that we had a lot of success with our students. And once they did redesignate, they were the ones that took off. So I wanted to make that comment because I think it's a really important point to make, is that it's a very good investment with our students.
Well, thank you, Raul. My guess would be that a large percentage of those students would probably be successful anyway, because they're the ones that would participate in programs like that, and also participate in AP classes or more advanced programs than usual. That's my guess. And that their parents are probably far more involved in their education than many of ours are. Is there any other public comment? Okay, then we'll move on to enclosure number 20, Library Media Services Update. Valerie Sita, welcome.
Hi, thank you. I'm trying to share my screen with you guys here real quick.
We can hear you, just not real loud.
Okay, I'll try to speak up. Sorry about that.
There you go.
All right, are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you. Good evening, members of the board, President Crabtree and Dr. Raveline. My name is Valerie Sita, and I am the District Library Media Manager for Visalia Unified. Thank you for the opportunity to present an annual report on library media services in VUSD to you tonight. In library media services, we believe in the power of school libraries to support our learners academically, socially, and emotionally, and to help build strong cultures and communities on our campuses. With this in mind, we have 3 overarching goals in library services that I'd like to share with you that align with VUSD's board goals, as well as give a little background on our work, what we have most recently accomplished, and where we plan to go next. Our first goal is to provide library services that inspire and support the reading lives of our learners and a culture of literacy. Strong literacy skills and grade level proficiency in reading is crucial for student success. And so we have been tackling the question of how to create book floods for our students when we know that many students in our community come from book deserts where there are sometimes only 1 to 2 possible places to access new books regularly in their lives: the public library and the school library. And for many of our low-income students, school is really the one place where books access is regularly and routinely available to them. So as we've narrowed in on this essential question, we have been working through how to ensure students have more access to books, increase circulation of books where students leave our libraries with book stacks, updated library collections so that they have new, relevant, updated titles that reflect our learners and our community, as well as to complete projects that have make navigating our libraries easier for our students and more welcoming all around. In terms of access, we made a major move this summer to a new online catalog or asset management system. This is called Destiny. And this conversion involved moving all of our titles from our libraries and sending out teams to clean up records and physically inventory all the libraries in our district. With our new platform, students and teachers can now place books on hold, reserve items from other libraries, and navigate our system with much greater ease. This process involved training library staff in the new system beginning in May and implementing the new system fully in August. Alongside that project, another summer project of ours was to refresh our VLC book hits. With the movement towards book clubs being used by more and more of our classroom teachers and great PD being provided by our district curriculum TOSAs on book clubs, we saw an opportunity to add new titles for teachers to use in classroom book clubs to make sure that these titles were high interest to our students, as well as of great literary quality. Then during the school year, I was able to help teachers preview these kits through interactive activities embedded into their full day of training at the district office. This helped increase exposure to our book kits, generate excitement among teachers, and therefore excitement among their students when those books got in their hands. Beyond providing up-to-date print collections, we have also been working hard on creating a robust digital library of ebooks and audiobooks on Sora or Overdrive for our students. We have seen tremendous growth in our circulation of the digital collection over the past year, and actively promote the digital collection by reaching out to families at literacy nights, on social media, through organizing the Overdrive Bookmobile to visit Visalia last fall, and through other means of outreach. Here are some examples. There's the Bookmobile itself that visited Ridgeview, and we had global learning charter students that were bussed over to also participate in that event. And then there's some examples of our booths and things that we've set up and done at literacy nights. Here are also statistics on our library collections, and the numbers have changed just a bit as we now have 10,500 ebooks and audiobooks in our collection. And as of yesterday, we have now a partnership with the Tulare County Public Library that went live yesterday that allows our students to have seamless access to the public library's juvenile and young adult digital collections as well. We also have close to 500,000 print books in our collection and an average print book copyright date of 2005. California Model School Library Standards recommends that 2/3 of our collection is 15 years or younger for copyright date, and that we have an average of 28 books per student. So through vigilant weeding of our collection, we are doing well in keeping our collections updated, while also doing what we can to have as many books as we can per student through the feeding of our collection, through collection development, as budgets allow. We don't have 28 books per student as of yet, but we're working towards that ambitious goal. In terms of circulation, between August and February of this school year, we have circulated over 600,000 books in print and over 50,000 digital books so far. And our circulation of digital books nearly tripled between 2018 and 2019. This is a lot of books to circulate. And I'd like to recognize the hard work of our school library staff in making this happen. They have really embraced the idea of creating book floods for our kids and have taken to heart the importance of the mission. Lastly, for goal 1, we have been updating the layout of our print collections by genrifying the fiction collections in each of our libraries. Traditionally, fiction collections in libraries have been shelved alphabetically by author, which was convenient for shelving books, but not always intuitive for learners looking for books. By organizing fiction books by genre, such as putting fantasy books together, historical fiction, etc., students are more easily able to physically browse the collection, connect with books in their genres that they like, and get to know themselves better as readers and have better library experiences all around. Here's a picture of a genrefied library. On the left, you see Ivanhoe and their recent collection update. And the wall of books there is all realistic fiction. This slide shows the progress of our genrefied projects. To date, we've completed 21 genrefication projects. We had 5 in progress before schools were shuttered, and we have a goal of completing our final 9 by summer 2021. These projects have taken a tremendous amount of our library staff's time and attention, and their students have expressed a lot of excitement at the new layout and the ease in finding library materials after these projects are completed. Beyond that, Our second goal is to support learners' information literacy skill development and integration of student research in the curriculum. We know that research is a life skill and that academic research skills take years to cultivate through integration in the curriculum and the right resources. Last winter, we put all of our academic databases in one place for students to access easily, to include Google authentication, Clever Access, so that students weren't hampered by having to use usernames and passwords, but had access to these resources really with a click of a button. And then I went on to disseminate this information to teachers in a variety of ways, including speaking to new teachers at new teacher trainings by invite from Shelley Groom's team, during curriculum PD and trainings, and at the middle school PD day in February, and through our digital newsletter that we send out monthly to staff. Our third and final goal in library services is to ensure the library environment supports the social, emotional development of the whole child. We have spent a good amount of time in our district library media trainings for library staff in a book study and in conversations about what welcoming and inclusive library services look like. And that is the expectation we have in place for all of our libraries and all of our librarians. We know our staff works hard to make their libraries a safe space on campus for students that may need a place to decompress, recharge, connect and collaborate with other learners, read, study, you name it. Over the past years, I've had the privilege of helping to design many of our new library spaces, including Ridgeview, Riverway, Denton, Ivanhoe, and now Sequoia. And it is creating spaces that serve the whole child that we keep at the forefront of our design and collection development. This is why you'll see flexible spaces that can serve many purposes for the changing needs of our learners and collections that are more diverse and representative of our populations. Here are examples of recent library modernizations at Ivanhoe, Royal Oaks, and Goshen, where those same elements of library design were put into practice. And we are proud of these spaces and how they demonstrate elevated library services that our learners deserve. We are continuing these themes and working on student-centered spaces and collections for Sequoia's new library, and began a pop-up library for Creekside that we will move and expand for next year. We have reached out to Sequoia and Creekside staff and asked for student feedback and surveys, and through other means to help us better understand what their students are truly seeking and what would they find value in their new libraries. Finally, in our last slides, you will see some of the exciting activities we've added to libraries in recent years, including Makerspace activities and virtual reality. Makerspace activities can run the gamut from low-tech Lego and coloring stations to more high-tech activities with Ozobots, Bebots, and other things. Virtual reality is now embedded in each of our middle school libraries and has recently been used by special ed classes, history, social science classes, and for enrichment opportunities. There are many additional things that could be shared tonight, but with 1 week left to go before School Library Month, I want to once again just say thank you to our library staff for their hard work and dedication to VUSD students. And with that, I would be happy to take any questions that you might have on this informational item. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Saida. I'll give the number one again for public comment, 559-931-8500. And while we're waiting for those comments, I'll ask for board member comment. Ms. Gamoyan. Need to turn, thank you.
I got it. I think I have it. I love libraries and you're doing a great job. I have a couple of questions. The average copyright date is 2005. So yeah, we don't have the good old classics like Charlotte's Web and.
No, we absolutely do. And so it is the classics of Charlotte's Web and Dr. Seuss and all of those that certainly do bring down the copyright average. But there's also the need, especially in nonfiction, to have more relevant current titles, right? So that's where you really find the balancing act. And that's where the recommendation then comes in between that 15-year window. But for sure, it's never going to be everything's from 2019. That would not be a very well-represented collection.
Okay. And then my other question is, it sounds like you do some staff development. Do our teachers actually take the time to teach our kids how to access the e-library?
You know, it depends kind of from school to school at this point. I sit down annually with site administrators and go through an annual report of their library particularly. And that's when I generally offer up that that opportunity when they would like me to come and meet with their staff and to embed that in staff development. So some have taken me up on that. And so we try to find different ways to push it out. And literacy nights have really been helpful though. We did one recently at Crestwood, Willow Glen, Ivanhoe, Conyer, and every time we go out and meet with families, we see a tremendous amount on the back end of people engaging with our digital resources, which is a pretty important thing at this time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank
Other
you.
board member comments? Mr. Fulmer?
Yeah, I'm just curious, do teachers still read to their kids in class?
Read aloud, yes. And our district curriculum, TOSAs have been working a lot with about interactive read alouds. Sarah could probably speak more to that, but I mean, there's a lot of research about how important read alouds are in language development, vocab acquisition. So it's huge.
Okay, thank you.
Other board member comments? Do we have any public comment at this moment on this item?
There are no comments.
All right, then we'll move on to the next item. Student rep report. I understand that Mr. Krebsbach probably has no report since there's no school or no activities, but we're glad to have you here.
Thank you, that's correct. Thank you.
You bet. And thus we will move on to board member reports. Ms. Gamoy, Mrs. Naylor.
No report.
Mrs. Moyen.
I really don't have much of a report except to thank all our staff, how they fed our kids, how they've got curriculum out and just kind of tried to normalize things for kids. So thank you.
Dr. Vasquez.
Again, thank you to all our staff and yeah, you guys be safe out there. And I'm hoping that we're going to wrap it up soon. It's almost 9 o'clock and I know people have been waiting a long time to make their comments. So I hope they get a chance to say their piece. I mean, we've got 90 people tuned in. So thank you for being here with us today. Thank you.
Mr. Foster. You have to turn your mic on. Can't hear you. Mr. Foster, we can't hear you. You have to turn your mic on the computer screen. While he's figuring that out, Mr. Fulmer, do you have a report for us?
No report.
Mr. Guerrero?
I just want to thank our staff, all the people that are providing the lunches and the curriculum and just everybody out there that are trying to get things going and maintaining some sanity throughout this whole thing. Thank you to all the staff.
Do we have Mr. Foster up yet?
Okay, I got to read about our student representative and his family in a Visalia magazine. It was very interesting to read about your family. You have a very wonderful family.
Thank you. Yeah.
Actually, tonight's meeting is different. It's unprecedented. We're meeting in different locations. So tonight's board report might be a little different. It's not a report about a school that has been visited, a play that was watched, or a conference that was attended. I'd just like to say to the people who are watching, our teachers, our classified employees, and that's about the unprecedented situation that we're in at this time. And that is one word, actually 2 words, look outward. Keep teaching your students, keep in contact with them, do your job and lift others. There's no other greater exercise for the heart than is lifting others. Most of you are probably doing that. I'm amazed at the meals that are given out that have been set up by our district. I think that's a tremendous accomplishment and has been well organized. And I want to commend our superintendent and the food services people who are administering that program. Look for someone who needs your help, whether it be a colleague, maybe they need a bag of groceries, maybe they need help with a car payment, maybe they need help with their mortgage payment. If you do this, I can assure you it will build a greater sense of community and trust with your fellow employees. Your heart will have a special memory, and that memory will tingle your soul. And I say that if you do these things, if you sacrifice to help someone else, in the end, it will be no sacrifice at all. And I say this.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. I'll take a bag of groceries.
Put me on that list.
Mr. Krebs, I haven't had a chance to read that article, but now I'm looking forward to it. So congratulations on your popularity.
Thank you. Yeah,
Hits just keep on coming. Good for you.
It was a fun time.
Dr. Ravlin. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry. My report is that I also want to congratulate you, but I think I've been doing that all week anyway. But to make it public is certainly important because you have organized this thing, and it looks as all your staff have been more than willing to step up and do what needs to be done. So keep it up. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I want to assure you all and assure the public that we have dedicated staff who are committed to taking care of our students and family. We also have community organizations and faith-based organizations who have reached out to see what they could do to further support our families and our communities. As you know, we closed school on Friday, the 13th. We opened our Emergency Operations Center on Saturday, March 14th, and we had many, many staff in transportation, nutritional services, custodial, cabinet, and beyond who worked through the entire weekend and who have been working extended hours since that time so we could provide the to-go meals and the curriculum by Wednesday, March 18th. And we've gone full bore since then. We have 16 sites that we do food meal deliveries with and 5 bus routes with some additional stops out in our rural areas. And at those stops, we have nurses on board to do a quick assessment of our students, to answer questions, to make sure that social distancing is used. We have administrators, we have food service folks from our nutritional services department, as well as our transportation and others. So it's been a huge effort with all our departments coming together. We opened our call center Monday, March 16th. It remains open. And we provided initially 3 weeks of curriculum for all grade levels, TK through grade 12, online as well as hard copy, to make sure all of our families have accessibility. We have made a determination that we're also going to provide meals over spring break, and sometime next week we'll get that out to the public. We probably won't serve every day, but maybe we'll serve all the meals. They're like ready to prepare meals on Monday, or we may do it, have services twice so that we can make sure that our families are cared for and our students are cared for over the holidays. We don't normally serve at that time, but we think with what's going on, we really need to do that. We're also preparing curriculum and meal plans for after spring break. Not sure, how things will play out at this point with the pandemic, but if we need to extend our closure through the month of April, which is highly likely at this point, we will have curriculum and protocols in place for teachers, speech therapists, counselors, and other to support our staff and our students and to work with them. And finally, I just want to say thank you again to all of our employees and our community for this opportunity for us to serve. And thank you to those who really worked hard to make this board meeting virtual tonight.
It's actually not been too bad. All right, staff dismissed. Are they all leaving? Oh, you can leave too, Mr. Krebsbach, if you want. Thank you for showing up.
Thanks for having me, guys. Have a good night.
You bet. Good night. All right. Recommended expulsions, enclosure number 21. Do I have a motion?
Move.
I have a motion by Mr. Fulmer, second by Ms. Gamoyen. I'm going to call for a roll call vote. John Crabtree votes in favor.
Juan Guerrero votes in favor.
Mr. Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Fulmer,
Yes.
Ms. Gamoyen,
Yes.
Mr. Guerrero votes yes. Mrs. Naylor,
Yes.
Dr. Vasquez. Dr. Vasquez raises her hand, so the vote is
Yes.
unanimous. Moving on to enclosure number 22, recommended continued expulsions. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion
Second.
by Mr. Fulmer, second by Dr. Vasquez. All in favor, John Crabtree votes yes. Mr. Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Fulmer,
Yes.
Ms. Gamoyen,
Yes.
Mr. Guerrero,
Yes.
Mrs. Naylor,
Yes.
Dr. Vasquez.
Yes.
All right, moving on to enclosure number 23, Measure A bond funds for modernization project scope. Mr. Hernandez.
Good evening, President Crabtree, members of the board, and Dr. Raveline. This is Nathan Hernandez, and we have tonight a brief discussion on the Measure A bond funds for our modernization projects. We'll talk about the timeline for selling those bonds, as well as some of the considerations, as well as what some of those projects.
Did you have a PowerPoint to show us online, Nathan? Otherwise, it's in your board packet. So if you'll turn to enclosure number 23.
Oh, I'm getting the presentation, John.
Bond
Oh,
was
you
approved
are?
by voters in November of 2018. It's a $105 million bond with $75 million allocated to
I got it.
a new high school and $30 million for school modernizations, our secondary science classroom upgrades, science labs, as well as campus security projects. And so those campus security projects are centered around two areas. The first is the cameras that would be at those single points of entry, as well as door locking hardware that could be activated remotely in that front office. So those were the two areas that were focused from the meetings that were held with the site staff, as well as our security folks. And then the campus modernizations, those are scheduled to begin design this summer with construction starting in 2021. Same goes with our science labs, upgrades for middle and high schools, designing this summer for construction and beginning in 2021. And then the new high school, as you probably all know by now, I was hoping today that we would have better news for Proposition 13. It looked like it was gaining a little bit of momentum, and then it stalled. And so that proposition did not pass, so there's not a state bond. So the new high school will, the plan is to continue with design. There's an item tonight on tonight's agenda after this. Well, there'll be more discussion on the high school design. This here lists the modernization projects. And so this is the 18 sites that were eligible for modernization state matching funds. The phases there in that middle column are the times, the years that those projects would be done. So phase 1 is next summer, phase 2 the following summer, and there's a legend there to the right. So when we're looking at those modernization projects, as I mentioned, there's $30 million in modernization funds. If we issued all of those modernization bond funds, that would get us through probably the first 2 phases, as well as the science labs and our campus security projects. But we'll talk a little bit more about when we'll come back to the board with a recommendation for how much to issue and how to size those the Measure A bonds. So this is an example of what the schedule would look like for the bond issuance. We'd come back to the board in April, be a much more detailed presentation on the mechanics of the bond sale and exactly what's entailed, the official statement and timeline of events. In the middle of May is when we would bring the draft's official statement. That's the document. It's basically our marketing plan for those agencies that would invest in the district's bonds. And so it's the district's financial position as well as some statistics about the district. And we'd have a rating agency call. So it would be either with Standard & Poor or with Moody's, where they would review the district's credit rating, issue us a new credit rating based on our position and our policies. And then in June, we would come back to the board for the official approval, the resolution that would authorize the issuance and the sale of those Measure A bonds. And that bond sale would happen either at the end of June or perhaps in early July. So on the new high school, without the state bond funds, we'd be looking at just the design portion. And so we'd look at just those first two, the yellow and orange there on your screen, the schematic design and development phase to continue to design the high school and get the high school in line for potential funding. Again, there's the item after this is more discussion on the high school design project. And so when we come in April, we'll have a recommendation for the bond issuance. These are some of the considerations in how to size that bond. We showed some of those Measure A modernization projects. We'd consider how many of those phases we could get done, and as well as the science classroom upgrades, the campus security projects. We'd also be considering how many series of bonds we want to issue. Of course, the fewer bond series that you issue, the less you pay in issuance cost. And so we'll try and make sure that we're as efficient as possible. The interest rates at the time that we go out to issue these bonds will play a role in how much we decide to issue and how much we can spend in those first. The bond funds have to be spent within 3 years. And then, the potential for another state bond and when we would continue high school and the rest of those modernization projects that will require state match for us to complete. And that's all I got for tonight.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Again, the phone number for public comment, 559-931-8500. In the meantime, I'll take board comments. Is there any? Mr. Guerrero?
Yeah, can the bond oversight committee be set up for a Zoom connection for a virtual meeting? I think I think they need to be involved in some of this discussion that's going on in terms of bond sales. I also know that they received there was a draft bylaws thing that went out that they were working on, and I'm just wondering if we can. I think most of them have computers, and I think hopefully maybe we can set them up so they can have a virtual meeting. I know there's social distancing, and there's also other considerations in terms of the pandemic, but I'd like to see that they get involved in some of this discussion on bond sale.
Yeah, we do intend to bring this information to the Bond Oversight Committee when we can have a regular meeting, or if we need to set up a Zoom meeting, we can do that also.
Dr. Vasquez?
Yeah, Nathan, I know that we want to buy as few bonds or sell as few bonds as we can because you're genius at doing all this financial stuff. But the last time we did this, did we do it in half, in thirds? Is that going to be our plan now, to just do a portion of them and then to do another portion? Did I
So
miss
when
that?
when we issued the Measure E bonds, we did do 2 series of bond sales, looking at the amount of projects that we could get done and the time period that we have to spend the funds. And so we would do the same with the Measure A bond fund. So we're looking at how many projects we could get done in the 3 years that we have to spend those funds.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Other board member comments? Thank you, Mr. Hernandez.
Oh, I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you up there, Ms. Gamoyan. Go ahead.
Okay, a couple questions. So like Dr. Vasquez said, we'd sell them, like we wouldn't obviously sell the bonds to build the new high school, but we could sell the 30 million, correct?
Correct.
And
We
then,
could sell, yes, we could sell the 30 million for the modernization project, science classrooms, and whatever design costs we have for the new high school.
mhm. And so is it gonna, because it looks like the economy is gonna go down. So is that gonna be to our advantage as far as interest rates?
As far as interest rates, yes.
Okay, and then my other question is, so I know we're gonna talk about this next, but moving forward on that high school, is there a possibility we could sell the $30 million worth of bonds and then an extra 1 or 2 million to cover our design costs for the new high school?
Yes, that's what we would do, is look at how much we would need to cover for design and for our modernization projects.
Any other comments? Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Do we have any public comments?
Public comments.
None?
There are no public comments.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Boone. All right, moving on to Measure A High School Design Scope Enclosure number 24, Mr. Lemus.
All righty. Good evening, Board President Crabtree, Superintendent Ravelin, members of the board. So as Mr. Hernandez mentioned earlier, I'll be covering the design scope of the high school and everything that entails. So for tonight's agenda, I'll review all the previously presented scope options that we had presented in previous study sessions with the board. Then I'll go over our new option 4, which basically encompasses all of the input we received from the community, as well as our forums that were set up at different sites, and then comments that were brought up from the board the last couple meetings. So I'll go through that, and then I'll do a follow-up with Q&A time. Let's see, Chuck is shifting over. Sorry, technical difficulties here. Oh, space, perfect. So this slide right here, what it covers is our original master plan. So this is what is encompassing all that was put into the approved ed specifications. So this is a school that would open with 1,800 kids, and then we would expand to 2,400 kids. So this encompasses all the stakeholder comments, all the meetings that we had with different agencies, as well as our maintenance staff, transportation. So everybody, all that info that was put into that ed specification is shown here on this master plan site. So from there, we took different cost estimates and started putting together different options. So Mangini actually put those together, but I wanted to go ahead and go through those and just as a recap, just to kind of talk about those before we talk about option 4. Option 1, this is one that was basically made to stay under both our Measure A 75 million as well as our eligibility that was available for this project. So we currently, our eligibility for this school site was 44 million. So between both of those, this was that design that would keep us under that umbrella there without having to put any additional funds from a district standpoint. But as we can see, it really limits in terms of being a comprehensive high school. So this does not have the theater. It doesn't have the CTE ag complex piece. So if you could see that in the upper, could you see my mouse okay? Yeah?
Yes.
So this
Yes.
option wouldn't have the CTE buildings as well as the ag farm area, wouldn't have the pool. It ends up taking off a lot of the parking lot here, and there's no stadium. So all the stuff that is within the red lines is what this design would encompass. So that's how we were able to get to that 108 million total budget. So that's option 1. And this is kind of a breakdown of what we had here. So construction cost estimate, this is hard cost, general contractor cost would be $94,500,000 with the soft cost estimate, which just for reference, soft cost estimates includes our testing labs, our testing labs, inspector of record, sorry, architect fees and all those soft costs that are included within that. So, and then down here, because we had to pare back that CTE building, our state funding estimate goes down. So since we're only able to house 1,450 students, our state funding eligibility would be going down to 33.3 million. And of course, we still have our Measure A 75 million on here. Jumping on to option 2, this is one that starts to bring back some of the amenities within that ed specification. So this brings back the CTE building into the project, as well as, well, it brings all the CTE in. It has the full build out within. So baseball stadium in the original one, so going back, it had that removed, softball stadium, all that removed, a lot of parking. So all that gets brought back in with option 2. But the swimming pool is still not included in this option, which was something that was considered in the 4th option that I'll be talking about. Because one big thing that we got from our community forums was that we, for PE's sake, as well as for, well, more than anything for PE use, we wanted to make sure to include a pool within this facility. So that option 2, that total project estimate was 150 million. General contractor construction cost estimate was 132 million. So moving on to, well, let's go over the breakdown real quick. So that construction cost estimate, like I mentioned, this is just hard cost for a general contractor. We'd have 132 million. Soft cost estimate, that's 18 million, which also includes, in the previous one as well, we included contingencies for inflation, as well as for, well, inflation in costs, but also for just budget costs in general. We wanted to make sure to include all those in there. So we did pad it a little bit to make sure that everything was encompassed here. So that brought that total project estimate to 150 million. This option does bring our full eligibility in because we are building to 1,800 students. It is a comprehensive high school at this point. So all our 44.6 eligible dollars would be available. And district funding from Measure A would be the 75. And the additional funding that would be needed for this option would be 30.4 million. So option 3, this was definitely the sticker shock option from our original meetings. This encompasses everything that the ed specification had included. So this is, like I mentioned in the first part, when it came to all the mini gym and gym was in there, stadium was in there, theaters in there, all our CTE buildings, and this is the full build out to 1,800 students with future classrooms at the end. So that's the only thing that wouldn't include is the future classroom building. But we already knew from the get-go that was something that we're going to expand on as we as this school site grows. So that was option 3. that kind of reviews all the three options that were presented previously. This is kind of the breakdown of that one. So we had a construction cost estimate of 168 million, soft cost estimate 21.5, for a total project cost of 189.5. State funding would be maximized at 44.6. District funding, of course, 75 million, and then additional needed on this one would be 69.9 million. So moving on, so this shows our option 4. What Mangini did was they took all the different comments and started looking into where we could pare back square footage more than anything, because with estimates, the biggest thing we could do is start paring back square footage to get to that ideal estimated cost that we want to be at. If you look closely, option 4 actually, just in overall numbers, is right on the money with where option 2 was. The only thing that we did here was we started cutting square footage to be able to include the pool back in. So just looking at a site overall, so the pool is included back in. The stadium is not included in this one, but we do have a track and field included with portable bleachers. So just like what you would see at an LD. And then the future theater. So this whole site is master planned for, if we ever wanted to build a stadium on this site, we will have the infrastructure to do that. And then when you look at the future theater, if we ever wanted to build that theater on this site, we would do all the infrastructure to build it on here. So the space is available. What we'll do is I'll start going through the floor plans here to show you what we changed or pared back to be able to get to this new cost and include this pool. So here's just an overview of the cost, 132 million. Soft cost estimates were at 18 million for a total project estimate of 150 million. Our eligibility is maximized at 44.6. And then our district funding, like I mentioned, was 75 million. So this one would also require an additional funding of 30.4 million. So going through the floor plans, one thing that was changed on this one, so there are student services and business curriculum, library, all that stayed the same. If you'll recall, originally we had collaboration spaces, restrooms all included in the middle in a pie-shaped type dual hallway. So that added quite a bit of square footage that we couldn't account for. So we pulled it back and did a central corridor similar to what you would see at Ridgeview, just wide enough to where we would be able to handle the capacity of a high school. So these hallways here are 16-foot hallways on both sides. And what we have on the second floor is we have 20-foot hallways in the middle. And then by the time the kids get to their actual destination on these two sides in the both bottom floor and upper floor, it would go down to 16-foot because by then these kids would know exactly what classroom they would go to. So Mangini feels comfortable with these widths of hallways. And just for kind of reference, when we did our case studies, the wings, they're about a 16-foot, so just under double of what Ridgeview is, which is at 10. And the center one is at 20 feet. So that's similar to, for anybody that was walked the case studies with us, that's what Clovis North has, and their student capacity is about 3,000 kids. So definitely wide enough to handle the flow of students.
Vasquez, do you have a comment?
Yes, I do, please. I know that you're looking for space and I'm comfortable with the width of the walking paths, because I think from what you told us that that's a good thing, but I'm a little concerned that we took out those pods or the workspace for teachers. Are they going to still have storage in their classrooms? Are these classrooms attached to one teacher and they're going to be able to put all their stuff there? I mean, before it seemed they had this workspace.
Correct. So
I know we're cutting stuff, but can you talk a little bit about what workspace and storage teachers are going to have, classroom teachers are going to have?
I got you. So those are actually the details that we would start to design in when we go into that next phase of design. But typically what we do in a classroom is we provide storage space for each individual classroom. So each classroom is their own teacher. They'll have their wall lined with storage capacity for their individual classroom. But we do typically provide storage locations within the floor for the different departments as needed. So we would be able to work those in. So if you see my mouse, we have storage areas throughout some of these locations. So right here by the restrooms, there's some storage and custodial areas, storage here. And then, so it's spaced out versus being right in the middle. What you will be losing on this one is the collaboration spaces, but in discussions, it's kind of more of a need than more of a want than a need. So a lot of those collaboration meetings could happen within the classrooms with your department and your PLCs.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Moving on to, so another area we were able to cut square footage back was our shops. So one thing, these were obviously oversized shops. You know, when you're looking at ed specs, you want to have that extra space to be able to work in. These shops right here, we were able to cut out about 25% of their square footage, which actually puts these equal roughly in square footage to what we see at Golden West. And with discussions just district wide, those shops are actually, they have the ample space needed for instruction. So we didn't see a problem with cutting back 25% of the square footage in those. We still have a classroom pull-out area for instruction. Visual and performing arts, that building was left alone just because of, like I keep going back to the needs versus the wants there. There was definitely, we need every bit of that space that is encompassed there. And then the plant, soil science, animal science, all of those stayed the same as well. Our multi-use cafeteria, this building stayed the same. Scramble room, everything stayed the same just because it's all critical space, but this wasn't ever, so square footage wise, this is what the capacity would be for a school this size. So we had to keep it the same. One thing with the gym that did change, we were able to find a couple of areas to cut off square footage as needed in some of these by the lockers and in terms of the foyer to get in, things like that. We originally had an angled entry lobby area, but now that this option, it removes the auxiliary gym, but it does allow for future expansion. But we ended up squaring this up a little bit just to be able to, so it doesn't look incomplete when the school is done, and it still provides for future expansion for that auxiliary gym. So it's just more for aesthetics, really. We were able to maximize some lobby space there and make it work. So just overview again, like I mentioned, the swimming pool is back in. This is a 25-meter pool, which is what we have at all other schools. This kind of shows the new layout for the buildings. Our CTE buildings cut back are in there as well. So parking lot, everything's back in. And then let's look at the, well, did I have the break? Oh, I showed the breakdown earlier. So just so we're aware, so this is once again, 132 million, saw cost estimate of 18 for a total project estimate of 150 million. I wanted to just I ended up inserting, this one isn't in your packets, but I ended up inserting a slide that kind of shows the previous layout. Now that we're with this new master plan, like I mentioned, we will be able to have infrastructure available for a future theater if we want to put it here, a stadium as well. But one thing that once we move forward with option 4, we will be losing this. So it's a move over to a central corridor, and all the restrooms now end up shifting over into the classroom area. So I just wanted to reiterate that one, that these spaces they get removed. So it isn't a master plan piece where you could eventually add those back in a later date. Those officially get removed. So I just wanted to bring that back. But with that, I'd like to open for questions and comments. This is an action item to move forward. And from a staff standpoint, our recommendation is to move forward with option 4, just to go into finish off design development and go into construction documents. That way we could take this. The plan is to have construction documents ready to submit to DSA towards the end of this year and in the beginning of next year's spring. At that point, we would have a year of review with the Division of State Architects. So the goal is to start or continue with design to have something that's DSA approved so that we could be in line with the Office of Public School Construction. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Okay, the phone number again for public comment is 559-931-8500. While we're waiting for those calls, I'll call for board member comments. Dr. Vasquez.
Yes, I just want to say that you were right on the head when you said that sticker price of that option 3. And when we had that study session, we kind of went, and we asked you to go back and to take another look, and you did. And I think that's a hard thing to do, but I think you incorporated so many of the things with keeping a functional, looking at needs versus wants, and really paring down the cost. And I really appreciate being listened to like that, even though it was the hard decisions and stuff, and understanding too that what you're asking us today is just permission to get in line. And that I agree with Board Member Guerrero that I really hope that we do get that a bond oversight committee involved, so that they don't feel they're completely left out, especially with, the way things are going. Before we move forward, because I know we had community forums, and I know we're doing budget stuff, and I know there's still a lot of balls in the air, but you did come back what we asked you. Can you change the format? Can you make it more affordable? Can we still have something functional? And I think all of you did that, and I really appreciate that.
Ms.
So I know
Gamoyan?
we're not ready for a motion, but when we are, I'm ready to. Thank you.
Ms. Gamoyan?
Yes, I am so torn, as you know, Mr. Lemus. $2 million to get in line, that's a lot of money. And I'm just wondering if there's a possibility we could negotiate maybe again with Mangini, maybe cut that price. We're going into a downfall in our economy. Maybe pay, maybe upfront doing less to get in line, and maybe deferring that cost later on, and using that money later on in like change orders and, the whatever that estimated, what do you call those? The soft cost estimates, maybe delaying some of that money, because $2 million to get in line is a lot of money. And so that's my hesitation, because honestly, I don't think we're going to get a bond passed in November, and we're going to pay this money. And when are we going to do a high school? And I know we promised the public a high school, but I'm just having some hesitation here.
Mr. Fulmer?
Basically, I'm not going to support anything that increases our deficit, not a dollar. So if Nathan assures me this will not put a deficit on our budget, I'm fine with it. If it will, I'm not.
Okay, stop everything, Nathan.
So, so the high school design would be paid from the Measure A bond funds. And so it's not coming out of general fund. It's not coming out of any facility dollars that we have. And so it doesn't add to the district's deficit for the design.
Okay.
I wanted to touch back on Board Member Gamoyan's comments in terms of just timeline in general with this one. So moving forward with this one, we still have, we would still be in design for about 6 months, so that would take us to a point where we're able to submit to DSA. At that point, we'd be able to get a tighter estimate on this, on the design itself, and really start to look at budget numbers. The tough part in terms of negotiating with the architect, so we had if you look at the percentage, it's all based on construction cost, estimated construction cost. So when we did our competitive process to get this architect on board, they were the cheapest and they were the most experienced in our eyes. So we, in a sense, we would already be looking at rather than the 2 million, like you mentioned, it would be like a 3 or 4 million. So that's one thing to consider, that if we were to go in a different direction, that would have been something to account for. But it's tough to really know until you really put all the details into these plans and we're able to get an official estimate on this. That way we're able to budget accordingly. But when we're looking at, so another thing that was mentioned was this November. One thing, if you look at the timeline, we wouldn't have approved plans until the end of next year. So that would look at 2022 as another potential year to have, we would know if there's another facilities bond on either the May ballot or the November ballot. These facilities bonds, that's the goal, is that eventually one will pass. And that's where we rely on to get our state matching for. So I know it's scary to roll the dice right now, but at the same time too, is facilities monies, school facilities bonds continue to just be put on the ballot. So I'm sure if there isn't one in November, or if it goes and it doesn't pass, we would see one in May of 22 or November of 22.
Mrs. Naylor?
Thank you. I too am so torn, and I'm just gonna, I would like to see option 3 built, because I think that's the kind of school we need. And I keep looking at option 4 and I just think, oh my gosh, here we go. We're doing the same thing we've done over and over again. We keep cutting and cutting and cutting, and now we're gonna get the school we wanted, and now we're gonna get the school that we really want. And then I just think, do we even need a school? And do we want to go down this road if we can't build what we want? Do we need to go out for another bond to build what we really want? And so I'm going to be honest, I have a hard time moving forward on this one at this particular time. Have we even thought about, if we want option 3, can we go out for another bond? Will the community support another bond to build the entire site? I don't know what the answer is. I just, I'm very torn.
Dr. Radlin?
You know, I think we need to remember a couple things, because this is a big decision. But and Nathan, you can jump in here anytime. But when the bond was first put on the ballot, there was information put out to the community and surveys done to see what the capacity would be for a bond in this community. Mm-hmm. And the bond amount that was put forth on the ballot for Measure A was what the community was comfortable with. So in these uncertain times, it may be doubtful that the community would feel comfortable supporting an additional bond locally. Overall, state bonds generally pass. We're in an unusual time, but you also need to remember that if it takes us 6 months to get the plans done and another year or so to get them approved by Department of State Architecture, the plans are still good for 4 years. And within that 4-year time or that 5-year time span, it's highly likely that a bond will pass. Additionally, there's nothing that cements us that we have to build a school. By getting in line and being in line for the funds, that doesn't mean we start construction. There's still decisions to be made in the years to come if a state bond is passed and we're able to move forward. It's also very common for schools to be built in phases. And I think some of you went on the case study trip to Sierra Pacific High School in Hanford. Mm-hmm. And if you'll remember, that wasn't all built out at all. And they're just now building the administration building. I think it was about 8 years ago that the campus was first occupied by freshmen. And for all this time, the administration has either been in classrooms or in portables. So there's no shame in building out in phases. And at that time, if we wanted to down the road have architectural plans for a stadium or a theater or anything else, the infrastructure would be laid if we decide to go forth, and additional things could be added. So I don't feel like voting for plans and the plans to be developed commits you till, forever and ever till death do us part. It's not like that.
So if I guess my question would be then, if we decided, well, let's just go for the entire, what everybody wants, and we can only afford this much to build it. I mean, we can only do certain parts of it. I mean, I don't know what the answer is. That's my dilemma. I'm just, like I said, I'm so torn. I'll let someone else
Mr.
speak.
Guerrero?
Yeah, I won't vote for option 3, and I'm not going to vote for $70 million of additional district funding required. I will consider the option 4 where it's $30 million. What's important for the board to really remember is that back in the administration prior to Superintendent Carasosa, that administration had opportunities to get in line to put some bond measures in there. And I'm not sure if it was for El Diamante High School, but it was around that time. And what happened is that the superintendent back in the late 1990s, what they did is they dropped the ball. They didn't get in line. Right now, what's important for us to do is to get in line so we can ensure that if a state facility bond does pass, that we're in line, we get the funding, we get the state match. But what we're talking about is getting an architect plan, submit it so that we can go in. And I agree, you know what, we can't build everything all at once. We're most likely going to have to go in phases. That's what's going to happen. We're going to have to go in phases. But I will not vote for an option 3. I will say, hey, staff went out. We asked them to reduce the cost. They reduced the cost by $40 million almost. Okay, and they came back to us, and no, it isn't the Cadillac, but it's functional. It's a plan that will get us a school facility, and then we can go on in phases. We're going to have to come to the reality that whatever we do, we're going to have to do it in phases. We can't get away from that. But right now, what we have to do is we have to get in line so that we can get the state match. Otherwise, it's all for naught.
Ms. Gamoyan?
I have another concern, and this really maybe it doesn't have to do with submitting the plans, but I just want to go on record as saying, when we're looking at projections of 8 years down the road, 10 years down the road, and the new high school is going to have 2,000 and Redwood was going to be down to 1,600, we have got to take care of boundaries. We cannot do that to Redwood High School. I mean, I feel like what we're doing to Redwood High School right now is a crime, having 2,400 kids. And then 10 years down the road, they're going to be down to 1,400, 1,500. And I just don't want to see that. I want to make sure the second time around when we do these boundaries, we do it so every school has, balance socioeconomically, and so that, there's not this imbalance that poor Whitney's suffering right now. So I'm just going to go on record as saying that, and I know that's going to be later on down the road, but I want to make sure that our high school populations are balanced.
Mr. Fulmer?
My concern at this point is that given the way things are going right now, I cannot imagine anything but our economy cratering for the next year or two. And I just can't support spending literally tens of millions of dollars on much of anything. If we can keep our buildings maintained and instructional materials going to the students and teachers, I think we'll be doing just fine.
Well, I think you have to remember what Dr. Ravelin pointed out as well, is that we're not building the school, we're simply doing the design. So hoping that in the next couple of years, that money may show up. Maybe the economy won't be so bad. Maybe people will become more family focused and more interested in education. Who knows what's going to happen? That's a crystal ball thing. But anyway, Mr. Guerrero?
I agree with you, John. And the main thing is that we have to get in line. And, Walter is correct. we need to look at those boundaries and you know, there's no way around it that we're gonna have to take another look at boundaries.
If there isn't, Mrs. Naylor.
Thank you. Yeah, we do need to take a look at the boundaries. I concur, and we really need to think about that. But, and Mr. Guerrero brought up, you know, I know we were gonna do something with the Bond Oversight Committee. Has the Bond Oversight Committee seen this option 4? Have we gotten that they say, oh, we're good? They're supposed to be looking at all this. Have they looked at it? It just doesn't seem like we're doing all the things that we need to do to get to where we are today. Has this been talked about at the
Dr.
Bond
Ryan?
Oversight?
The Bond Oversight Committee has not specifically met. We had a study session going over these plans. It was a public study session. And so as with any member of the public, they had the option to look at the plans, to come to the meeting and make comments and such. Although at that time we were doing public distancing and their comments would have been one at a time escorted over here into the boardroom. But they did have that option, just like any member of the public. They also have the option to this evening. This is all public information that was put out on our website. And so they've got that option. They have not met separately. Again, the design part of it isn't part of the bond at this point. We're just asking for you to take action tonight on an option to go forth and design plans.
The only thing, but they haven't, has this plan, because it has to do with the money, has it gone to the Bond Oversight? Have they had an opportunity to meet and look at this? I guess that's my question.
They
not met yet since our study session. So do we need to, I feel we need to give them an opportunity. I feel like we're making this decision in isolation, that we haven't given them a chance to look at the numbers, to look at what we've done, to make it scale back, to look at, I mean.
I don't believe that's the case, because this is public knowledge right here. And I would bet you a dollar to a dime that a couple of those people are very aware of what's being presented right now.
And it was also public for the study session. You know, that was a posted agenda that was available to the public. All the documentation has been out now for a few weeks, if you count the public session and then this.
Dr. Vasquez?
Do we know, I know that we were sequestered and that any visitors were sequestered in that big room, but we generally have half of the oversight committee in our lobby. Were they in that sequestered room? Do we know that? Do we know for a fact that people are watching and that they've had a chance? So this is where I'm really torn, is that one, yes, we've been kind of showing them and it's public knowledge and we had that study session, but the way the district runs, usually we plan the meetings for them, we set up. Is there really that big of a time crunch to hold this for 2 weeks and give the Bond Oversight Committee a chance to at least talk it over and you know, come back with something? Or is the idea that what we're voting on is just the design, and after we get in line, that can also be altered too? It's really a place setter to be in line. Can you answer those questions for me, please?
Yeah, so right now it is very much jumping in line to get these plans in. The Bond Oversight Committee, this is something that once the board ultimately makes their selection on how to move forward, this is something that we would present to them, letting them know that we've done our due diligence on our end, making sure to include the community. After the board is settled on a specific design, then that would be something that we present to the Bond Oversight Committee to let them know how we're spending those dollars or what estimates we have and how we're moving forward with bond dollars accordingly.
So the answer is no, they don't get a chance to look over. They're just overseeing us. They're not an advisory. They're just overseeing the process.
Correct.
Mr. Guerrero?
Yeah, I think we need to get in line, but I also believe that we need to set them up virtually. The way we're conducting this meeting, have them have their bond oversight committee meeting. But I truly believe that we need to get in line. If we want to move it, wait 2 weeks, I could go with that too. But we need to make sure that the bond committee gets set up so they can have a virtual meeting.
Mrs. Naylor?
So can I make a motion to table this?
You
to the
can.
next meeting Decision, and in the meantime, this goes to the bond oversight committee, and then we'll bring it back to the next board meeting?
I have a motion to table this item again for 2 weeks. I have a second by Ms. Gamoyen, and I will take the vote. I will vote in favor of that. Mr. Foster?
We have public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Sorry.
Go ahead, public comment.
Just one moment. Go ahead and speak, starting with your name. Go ahead.
This is Nick Messia. Can you hear me?
Are you there? Yeah, go ahead and speak, starting with your name.
My name is Nick Messia. I am the bond oversight chairperson. And a lot of the information that I've heard on the presentation is true. We were aware of the work session. I arrived late because I didn't know it was on a work session earlier in the day. We were informed at various meetings that facility staff will be telling us of when these items were being presented so that we could then attend. That had not happened. We've been worried about our bylaws, and we have not even received any information back from the bylaws. So we have not fully seen this. We have not fully vetted this information. If the board wishes for us to do that, we can do so, and we can call a meeting and do it through Zoom if needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Messia. All right, I have a motion to table and a second. Mr. Foster, your vote?
I also vote to table this motion at this time.
Mr. Fulmer?
Yes.
Ms.
Table.
Gamoyen?
Yes.
Mr. Guerrero?
Yes, and set the bond committee up for a virtual meeting.
I agree. Mrs. Naylor?
Yes.
And Dr. Vasquez?
Yes, but I think we need to be clear about if the bond oversight committee is going to be virtual. I believe only 3 of us can be there. Is that correct? Or will that be a public meeting? If those things could be clarified, so we really have transparency, I think that'd be important.
We will clarify those. We have a unanimous vote to table this item again. And therefore we'll move on to the last enclosure, number 25. I'll read out the phone number one more time. 559-931-8500 is the call-in number. And the enclosure's recommendation and resolution to eliminate particular kinds of classified services, classified positions. Mrs. Somavia.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Raveline and President Crabtree. Tonight I bring you Enclosure 25, recommendation for a resolution to eliminate particular kinds of classified service. Cabinet was tasked with finding areas to scale back while we continue to provide essential services for students. And after receiving feedback from both community and site administration, as Mr. Sullivan outlined earlier in his presentation, and after very careful consideration, we bring forth a list to you today. We're asking for board approval on this list. We will, as always, work with CSEA on the effects of layoff to do our best to place people in, place employees in other positions if they are indeed either being reduced or eliminated.
Do we have any public comment yet?
Yes, we do.
Go ahead and speak, beginning with your name.
Hi, my name's Deidre Johnson. I'm calling from Crestwood Elementary. I have a question as to the support staff that's being eliminated. it not only impacts our children, but it also impacts our principal, our teachers that we assist them. Some of you have been principals, so you. If we're building a new high school, then how are we going to be able to give employees to that high school if we can't pay the employees that you have now?
Okay, I didn't hear your whole comment. I'm sorry. We switched it over to speakerphone. So I'm going to paraphrase what I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong. You're asking if we're building a new high school, how will we pay for employees to work at that new high school? Is that what you're asking?
That's correct. Not only that, but the impact that it gives to our children and our principals who already work so hard, that we give the support to them as well. So I feel like we're failing not just our students, but our staff members as well. So I'm a little confused. If we're going to be building a bigger high school, how come we cannot retain the staff that we have now?
So it's not that we can't retain. So what we were looking at is we were looking mainly for these positions that you see listed here is our restructuring that Mr. Sullivan went over earlier. So providing a system of support for our students. So instead of in isolation support, that they would have support all the way through from kindergarten through high school. So he talked about that, and that includes positions like safe social workers, behavior personnel. So they would be assigned to feeder groups to be able to, again, provide better service. And then we were also looking at allocations for our clerical staff for elementary school, middle school, and high school. And what we have found over the years is that we are staffing each school the same regardless of enrollment. So we have elementary schools, for example, at over 750 students that were staffed with the same amount of clerical help that we have at a school with 300 students. And so we're just trying to make sure that we're being fiscally responsible and we're providing staff appropriate for the size of the school.
Okay, my last question, and I will let you go, would be when do we find out if our job is eliminated?
So if the board approves these, either eliminations or reductions, then my staff will begin working on creating the list of each employee affected. We'll meet with CSEA. It's our due diligence to meet with them to negotiate any effects of layoff, which means if there's any bumping included, putting people into other positions that they may qualify for that we have open. And so we will get that information out to employees as soon as possible. It's going to be a little bit more difficult in the circumstances we're in. We usually do a face-to-face meeting with the employee. So we'll have to make those outreaches over the phone to them to explain things. And that sometimes takes a little bit of time, but we will begin, we hope this week. I'm meeting with CSEA and my team on Thursday afternoon.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for your call.
Any other public comments?
Hello, this is the VOSD board meeting.
Yes.
One moment, please.
Okay, go ahead, caller.
Hi, I'm calling to, I'm actually calling because I am actually in one of the positions that's going to be eliminated. I'm currently assigned as a BIS, and I'm actually filling in for a BIT.
Mm-hmm.
And I just found out today that both of those positions are being eliminated tonight, and I'm actually quite curious as to how, basically, I support 40 kids at one of the smallest elementary schools in the whole district.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how I'm going to be replaced. I really don't.
I understand. So for our behavior techs, we have 9 of them. We have many more behavior intervention techs in the district. And then we have behavior analysis aides, 3 of those, and 3 of the behavior intervention specialists, the BIS that you referred to. So we're not eliminating every position, and that would go based on seniority.
Correct. So I was hired as a BIS in 2017. That was less than 3 years ago. And I'm basically finding out that I'm least seniority. I'm probably going to be gone. And I've helped so many kids, and I'm not going to be there to help anymore. And I hope that the board member knows that they're not just affecting me, they're affecting all the kids that I could be helping. So yeah, I'm one of the ones that's going to be cut because of this, and it's sad for the kids. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other public comment?
Yes.
USD board meeting. Just one moment, please.
Okay, go ahead, caller.
Hi, my name is Cassandra, and I was calling in regards to the motion on laying off classified employees. I was calling because I was previously employed as a STAFE, the Student Advocate and Family Engagement Tech, and I was actually lucky enough to be able to work at the high schools. I worked with mostly foster youth, and I really made that connection to the kids, and them seeing somebody every month that was going to come and support them. In reviewing what Jim Sullivan presented, he presented about, you know, the 2 people district liaisons and all of that. As someone who worked at 4 comp sites, and not just for foster youth, and 1 and Sequoia High School, I can tell you that my time was already stretched thin. I think where you really say we put value in social and emotional health, but I feel like this wouldn't be a show of that. I think where our decision is going to hinder our students in the long term. And I think our goals are on the dashboard. I think that's going to show as well in the future that we're really falling out of line in our previous goals, and we're not going to, I don't feel we're going to value the students. I also see that there's other positions that play many roles, especially at Sequoia High School, you know, without looking at each and every individual site and seeing what these people do. I don't think it's fair for you guys to take a vote on all of those positions without seeing the impact that's going on with the kids. And essentially, we're going to miss when this motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next public comment?
USD board meeting. One moment, please.
Go ahead, caller.
Good evening, President Crabtree, Superintendent Ravelin, members of the board. This is Mark Isaac. Leaders today are asking each of us and all of us together to sacrifice in order to bring us through this pandemic all in one piece. And I'm just wondering, as you've weighed options in your meeting about your goal of managing the district's financial resources, reserves, and funding requirements that seem to address retirees from every classification, can I ask if you've considered across the board salary reductions so employees from each and all areas participate equally toward the goal? And how will certified management and administration similarly share in the kind of reductions and position eliminations that are proposed here for classified employees?
So we are looking at ways to cut back in all areas, really. I'm sorry, I'm talking over someone. Were any board members trying to speak?
No.
Okay, sorry, I was getting some feedback there. I'm not sure where it come from. We are looking, the board and cabinet have been looking at where we can make cuts in really every category.
Other
Okay,
public
looks like
comment?
the caller hung up, so let's see if we have another one. We
USD
do.
board meeting. One moment, please.
Thank you. Go ahead, caller.
Yes, hello. I'm calling because my job is in relation to one of the positions that is potentially going to be cut. And it's not so much of a question that I have for you all this evening. It's more about what you are asking your board member to vote on and its dramatic effect of what it's going to have on the school sites. You know, principals and site admin are crucial to the function of every site staff. But things that incorporate behavior to be able to manage those sites are equally as important, in my opinion. In my opinion, is the board member really does need to consider what they are letting go with minimizing the social emotional wellness department and everything that we have provided in these 3 years. I understand that sometimes data can support that maybe some of our methods aren't perfect with how everything is being run, granted, because it is a new program. But looking at the positives of what has been brought to some of those students with the staff that you were wanting to cut, I ask gratefully or gracefully that you consider us. Thank you.
Thank you.
The USD board meeting. Hello, would you like to make a comment? One moment. Go ahead.
Do you want me to read my comment right now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I wrote a letter to the board. Let me turn this off. So I'm just going to read the letter that I wrote. It says, "Dear board members, I am writing this letter in response to the proposed cuts and reductions to classified staff members." Am I doing this right?
Yes, go ahead. You're fine.
Okay. To classified staff members that are outlined in this evening's board packet. These cuts are extreme, to say the least. I understand that the district has a budget deficit, but it seems administration is taking no responsibility for the massive deficit. The responsibility is being inappropriately placed onto the backs of the lowest paid members of the Visalia Unified, the classified staff. It is impossible to look at these cuts without noticing a glaring omission. There are no administrative jobs being cut or reduced. In fact, the district is actively seeking to implement new positions to the Student Services Department, a position that by itself will cost the district over $150,000 per year. How many low-level classified positions could be saved by administration tightening their?
Are you still there? I think that we lost the caller. I just do want to say in response, I hope the caller is listening, is that this specific agenda item is just for classified. So it wouldn't include any classified management or certificated management.
Just one moment.
Other calls?
Yes. Go ahead, caller.
I think that we lost the caller. I just do want to say in response to hope the caller is listening, is that this specific, I just had a comment, just for classified. So it wouldn't include any classified management or certificated management.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
Is this for the school district?
Hello, have you given your comment? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, my comment is regarding the staffing for all the sites. I'm calling from Mount Whitney.
Okay.
Mount Whitney does not have the 5 admin assistants that the other high schools have. So by cutting our counseling assistants, you're essentially cutting somebody that also supports the student services department at Mount Whitney High School.
So all high schools have the same number of classified clerical staff, with the exception of Redwood because they're over enrolled, and so they have 1 extra clerical staff member.
But the other high schools have 2 secretaries or admin assistants in the counseling or student services department, except Mount Whitney.
So it's up to the site where they use their clerical staff at, but they're all staffed. All high school is staffed with the same number of individuals. We don't direct at district office where those staff members are located at, in which office. That's for the site to decide.
Okay, so we'll have to find out where that extra clerical person is at Mount Whitney High School.
Yes, so the current staffing should look like 4 admin assistants, a senior admin assistant, a finance assistant, an attendance clerk, and a counseling assistant.
Thank you. Okay, that was just my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
The USD board meeting. Go ahead.
Go ahead, caller.
Hi, good afternoon or evening. My name is Angela Santana. I am a space tech with Goshen Elementary. And my comment was simply that I think that it is true that across the board, we have safe techs at each one of 24 different sites. But there are certain sites that I think possibly need to be reevaluated as far as maybe coming up with a position really close to what a safe tech would be. What I do at Goshen Elementary is, aside from what the safe techs specifically do, that we're responsible for making sure students are in compliance with California state attendance laws. So we do that. But aside from that is being really that piece, that family liaison, where we talk to our families, we find out what their needs are, if they have any type of food insecurities, if they have anything that we can help them with so that their children can thrive. And I know that this is uncertain times and that, you know, it's one of those things where we have positions that might be cut. But I think that something needs to be done to address needs such as that, because we're also liaisons to homeless children, to foster children. We go through and we do a lot of things with our families where we connect them to different things within our communities. And we assist our admin, we assist our staff in the office. So I know that really, I mean, due to the pandemic, that a lot of our families, and I'm really concerned about my community because Goshen is such a high need community normally, but I know they're a very high, they're going to probably be an even higher need community after all this pandemic. And so I think that if there is a way to find some kind of repositioning of people so that a lot of the services that we provide to our staff and to our families are not cut, because I think that we provide a really essential link between our families and our schools. So that is my comment.
Angela, thank you for your comment. I think that we are thinking along the same lines as you are. We don't want to cut services. What we have seen is that we have safe technicians that provide an essential function at the school sites. I was a former principal. And then once the students leave 6th grade, then they go to middle school. Now they have a social worker that helps them. And then when they leave 7th and 8th grade, then they go to high school and they have another person that helps them. And what we're trying to do is align services. So we have a social worker, a Swats, a district liaison, social workers, school psychs that all work in that feeder group. And so a student from starting in kindergarten all the way through high school, the family has the same connections. So they're not changing out who is helping them to receive services every few years.
Okay, so is that you're looking to maybe base something out of the district office instead of at a school site?
Exactly, but also knowing that we may have sites that have higher need, and so they may be stationed at a school site, you know, one day a week, every week. We're still working through what that looks like, and really we have to assess, and we know that needs change. And this pandemic, like you mentioned, will change probably the needs of some of our students. So we'll be targeting areas that need more help, and then school sites that don't need as much help. Obviously, we wouldn't have someone, you know, there daily if we didn't need that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Right. We've gone over our 20 minutes on this topic, so we're going to have to cut it. I think we get where these people are coming from, and we totally sympathize. And I know that the district will do everything they can to help all of those who are affected by these changes that are coming down. Is there any board member comments? All right, Mr. Guerrero.
Yeah. Earlier this month, I made a request in terms of attrition rates, in terms of how many folks do we lose a year, and how many people we hire. And I know that there's quite a number of turnovers that occur, and it's my hope that I know there's going to be bumping. I know there's going to be people reassigned, and there's collective bargaining agreements that have to be looked at. And it is my hope that people can find, or we can find positions for the folks that are losing their jobs or losing their hours. But I'm asking that we make every effort to make sure that people find a place and that they land on their feet. Thank you.
Other comments? All right, I need Dr. Vasquez.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Again, I would like to thank all those people that hung out here till 10:30 at night, that we had over 90 people watching, participating today. And we had quite a bit of discussion on this as well. This has been a long time coming. This is just the list that's been toned down a bit. I know it's difficult to see your job description there, but we really do value our employees. We have long-term employees, and my understanding that the numbers will go down quite a bit as to the number of actual people that will lose their place or a position at the school district. So please know that we did struggle over all of this, and that we have made a lot of changes, and hopefully when that new model gets instated and things settle down, that we'll still be able to provide those services for students, which is always our primary goal. So we appreciate and value our staff. And I appreciate your time and your effort to speak today. Thank you.
Ms. Gamoyan?
This is a really hard decision, but there were a lot of duplication of services. And so we needed to make sure that we focused and pared down some of those duplication of services. And like Dr. Vasquez said, we do value our staff. And Mr. Guerrero also said, there's a lot of attrition, and so we're hoping most of our people will still be working for us.
Mr. Fulmer?
I think it's important to say that our administrators are working at the direction of the board. So it is our responsibility when people get laid off, and absolutely we try to find a place for every person who is laid off. But these are decisions of the board, not our administrators. Thank you.
I need a motion.
Move.
Mr. Fulmer moves. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Foster. The roll call, I vote yay. Mr. Foster?
Yay.
Mr. Fulmer?
Yay.
Ms. Gamoyan?
Yes.
Mr. Guerrero? Mr. Guerrero? You're locked up. Okay,
Yes.
I'll accept that as a yes. Thank you. And Mrs. Naylor?
Yes.
Dr. Vasquez?
Yes.
The vote is unanimous.
Thank you.
And I thank you all, and I wish you a very good night. It's the end of the meeting.